Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, man, we're fucking back at it, man. We're car shopping. As promised. Now, those of you all who don't know, I was fucking having a little good time. A little, maybe too much of a good time. And I fucking had my keys in the car. I left my keys in the car. More than left I had my car engine on with the keys in the car because I was charging my phone. I don't know what I was thinking, but the thought pattern was that we were gonna turn on the car and charge the phone in the car while I continued, you know what I mean, about my day. You know, because that's what you do. You just leave your keys in the car and turn it on, you know, and you just respect the fact that people are supposed to respect your property and not touch your things, you know. Yeah, that's the good stuff. So obviously, I guess the car wasn't there when I came back out. So, motherfucker, I look over to my left. I'm like, why is there an empty space where my car used to be? Apparently, no mas. So, with that being said, you know, we have to now find us another car. You know, that's all. So, what we got here? Me. This is, I guess, what was the original car? Let's do that. It was a 328i BMW. Right here, but no.
Hey everyone, welcome back.
It was a 2011.
Welcome to Wacky Wednesdays, where everyone has a chance to show off their car mods. And here's this week's winner.
Today, I'm going to show you guys my BMW 328i. It's a 2008 model, so I've had it for quite a while now, and I've had a lot of time to do a lot of stuff to it. Essentially, it's a straight six, so it's not the easiest to work on as far as, since it's a straight six, the cylinders in the back, the spark plugs and ignition coils are below like the cabin air filter and a bunch of other things you have to take out. So it is kind of annoying in that regard, but the weight distribution of the engine to the car, it makes it the best car. I've avoided like 3 or 4 car accidents with this car. I'm gonna go over some of the things that I've done, starting with the back here. So if you look down here, you'll notice that there is an exhaust cutout, and that is electronic, and it is controlled remotely from a keychain. So I can essentially bypass the muffler whenever I want. I can have the car sounding extremely sporty, and also have a more open flowing exhaust when I want, or have regular muffler. The next thing,
okay, look, he got a little silencer.
The backup camera.
He took a little silencer on it.
328i there is blacked out. Over here, you'll see the rims are actually, they're not powder coated, they're just painted. They're painted like a high temperature wheel paint, and so are the calipers. This job took me the longest time. Just painting these wheels was a lot of work. It takes like maybe 5 or 6 hours if you're gonna do it right, because you have to put a lot of coats on there. Next thing you'll notice is the headlights are not factory. BMW offers a halogen model and also a high intensity discharge model. The grille is painted. Usually they're like chrome, but it's painted the same color as the car. This is kind of a cool feature if you live in a hot place. If you hold down the unlock button, what it's going to do is it's going to start unrolling the windows. So now that we're on the inside of the car, you'll notice that this trim here is not the OEM trim, which is actually like a wood kind of 90s theme that they had going on. So what I did was I got all the trim pieces, pulled them off, went online, found some carbon fiber wrap, and I just wrapped them all. Next thing you'll notice is that head unit is not stock. That head unit is an aftermarket head unit to look like a BMW iDrive system. So I'll show you what I mean when I put the key in here. Now, there is a way to use the car without the key, but it is kind of annoying. Here's how you can operate the car without a key. It's really weird. So you turn the car on, and you turn
he got
it
the
off,
motherfucking.
and you take the
He
key
done
out,
put the little souped up
and then
screen
the car starts
inside
without
this.
the key.
Inside this
So
shit,
it's
I
pretty
know, man.
weird,
God
but it does
damn.
work. The mirrors fold
I gotta
in
do
and
something
out,
like
so if
that.
you're going through really tight
I like
space, you
that.
just press this little button right here.
If I ever
and
get
it will
my
fold
baby
the
girl
mirrors.
back.
Also, what it does is that when you back up, it should not tilt the mirrors down. And then if you push it to the left and you were to back up, it will tilt the mirrors down, so you can see, as you can see on this side, it tilts that mirror down so you can see the curb and not scratch your rims. That is a really great feature. I actually really like that because, you know, you really don't want to scratch your rims, and it's a pain in the butt, you know, sanding them and repainting them and all that. On this remote, I can open or close the exhaust cutout. So right now it's open. Let me give the car a little rev.
My baby girl,
So you
I'm
can
remembering
hear
my baby
what
girl.
it's like with the exhaust cutout open.
Hashtag, I'm remembering my baby girl.
We're going to
It's
close
so
the exhaust cutout.
hard to say goodbye.
Now you can hear that low drone noise is kind of gone.
To
Now let's put it back in neutral and let's give it a rev.
Look at that. My baby used to have
So as you
that
can see,
pull.
it sounds, or as you can hear, it sounds
That thing got that
significantly
pull. That
So like I said,
BMW.
3.6. Those,
Oh, his engine is
cylinders
very
back
clean.
there,
Boy,
kind
you
of hard to
took
get to, but
took
not
care of this
impossible.
car, goddamn.
Just annoying when you're changing ignition
I
coils and
take
spark
care of
plugs.
this shit.
There's not a whole lot of
engine
room
ain't
to
that
work in
clean.
here,
God,
but it's
dog.
not that horribly cramped. Like right here, you still could get in here if you really needed to work on something. It's not the most pleasing experience. There are some BMWs that have disgusting gunk inside the engine. This engine, I've opened it up. It is so clean. It is beautiful. There's no gunk. Oil changed all the time. When I bought it, it had 20K miles on it. So, you know, everyone that's had this car has taken care of it. The only thing was some of this weather stripping here was missing. So I went and bought that online to replace it. All right, so let's show you some of the CAN bus integration of this this head unit. It integrates CAN bus steering wheel controls. So not only can I pair to Bluetooth with my phone, once I'm done pairing to Bluetooth, I can go ahead and press the phone button over here. It will take me to this menu. I press this, and now I have access to my entire music library. Not only that, I can seek the track from my steering wheel. So I don't even have to take my hands off the wheel to change the music. The other thing is that this head unit can actually connect to your phone over Wi-Fi, and then you can actually look at maps. You could use online maps too. The other thing is I could do AirPlay on this. I could broadcast my whole
God
iPhone
damn,
to
my
this
nigga got the
screen right
little
here.
upgrade on
I
his
really
junk.
do like the
I
offline
said I
map.
was
It's a
gonna
nice
do
little
that.
screen.
I said, man,
Shows
I'm
you
gonna
where you
fucking
are.
upgrade
There's
my
a nice
little
GPS
motherfucking
antenna
yeah,
in there.
me.
The other cool thing is the Steptronic. Essentially, you switch the gear knob to the left, and now on my cluster here,
That's my
I
baby
can see it
girl,
says
man.
DX,
Y'all
which
got
is
man.
Drive Sport.
Give me back
So
my
if I
baby
don't,
girl.
if I don't alter the gears at all, it's just gonna drive
I'm like,
in
hold
sport
up,
mode.
man.
But if I want to engage manual mode, what I'll do is I'll push this forward for first gear, and
That's my little
backwards
baby
for
girl,
every
man. I done been
succession
around
of
the
gears
world.
upwards. So if I'm in first gear
In
and I
that
want to switch
car,
to second,
man.
there's no clutch, so it's just the gear shift. We're in
God
first gear.
damn, man.
We'll get
Bring
to
back
around
baby
3,000
girl.
RPMs, and we'll switch to second.
Look at that thing, boy. That thing got some pull. I done raced Lamborghinis
And
and
now we're
shit
coming up to a bump
in
so
this
we're gonna
car,
slow down
man.
for
I
a
didn't
second.
get all that.
But yeah, so
I didn't took it all
use this car
on
in
that,
manual mode.
yeah.
You can use this car in automatic
back
mode. So
my
yeah, so you could
bed.
drive this car manually if you wanted, but I really do like the automatic transmission. It's got a nice transmission. It's a fun car. Here's another cool feature.
Oh, he got
This
lights on
projects
it. He
the
did that
BMW
too.
logo.
My
You can't change
BMW,
up
my
the
other
lenses. I have
BMW
some
has
other
that.
extra ones. There's an M1. There's an X1.
know.
I even saw some other crazy
See,
ones
man,
on
that's
there.
what
You
that's
can
what
order
that's why
custom
I'm glad
ones,
if
have
I get
whatever
him back.
you
Cause
want.
it
I
feel
hope you
weird. I
really
can't
learn
even say
something
my other
or,
BMW
found out about a cool
because
feature on this car.
I only have one
And,
right now,
this
and
one.
I'm not
Well, that was
baller.
this week's video.
I gotta go
If
back.
your
We gotta
car
get it
mod
back. All right, so
showing
now
up
we
my
seen.
channel here.
We saw my
Check
little.
this
That's my
out.
little Sunday car, man. So I was in my little Sunday car, and some fucking hoodlum, goddamn fucking hoodlum, touched my goddamn BMW. Okay. Let's see about my other car. I have another car too. Is it in? I have an M3 Rockin' race car. Yeah, it looks like this. Seriously. I know this without all the stickers and shit. And a smaller spoiler. And it's a 4-door just like this one. That's what I'm saying, bro. Nigga try to check my cars, man. I'm about to go check them out. My baby's there. So I have this car too. Let's see how fast she goes. How fast I've been in this car? I've been like 173 miles an hour in this car. And that other car, my baby, I topped her out. I went like 150 miles an hour in that other car. That was crazy. Don't ever try that at home. So that's what I'm trying to figure out what kind of whip I'm going to get, man. I'm gonna get the S-Class. In all honesty, I'm looking at a Rolls Royce now on the other team. It's like the Rolls Royces are so fucking cute. I seen a Rolls Royce the other day. I was like, oh my god, what do we do with it? I'm about to say, he pushing that motherfucker. He motherfucker pushing that goddamn Beamer. That nigga fucking floating that motherfucker. Yo, light him up, light him up. Boy, y'all about to make me motherfucker want to go drive, man. That's what I was doing. I've been working out. Cause goddamn, you gotta be in like physical fit to be driving these cars, man. My fucking race car. I ain't going to do it. Can't be fucking slacking. The girl last night tricked me. See everything. I'm naked on the chip. There we go. I need it right here. This Mercedes V12. That's all we need right there. The S550. I don't know. Should a BMW ever really gotten away from the V8? I don't think so. I think a V8, boy, that would have run. This thing would have been a fucking demon. Because see, what happens is the M3 is very fast, but it starts to dwindle on these prolonged races. That goddamn heat sink and all that, whatever turbo heat or whatever, it starts to slow it down over time. Like most cars, whatever, you know what I mean? That thing fast, as long as, if you had like a steady cold air coming across that thing like where it's supposed to be in Germany, where you know it's a nice cold day, that the BMW accelerates. That's what those big nostrils, all that good cold air, you know what I mean? Creating that low pressure, all that shit, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, but like the BMW slows down in these hot weather conditions because that intercooler, the speed drops down. See how he's slowing down? That motherfucking turbo is hot. Even though I'm sure they got bigger intercoolers and everything, but you still can't stop that issue. The issue is an issue. But the car is light and quick. See how it's like slow though right there? Why is it so slow right there? It's going fast, but he ain't going fast enough. I know he's trying to go through these turns so he don't flip that bitch. Something came up out of there. Leaking some kind of fluid. Goddamn Porsche just cut in front of us. Because those Porsches are so little small and nimble and shit, and they got that engine in the back. So a lot of that cold air is like creates cooler temperatures back there. So thus, you know what I mean? That's why the turbo really so quick. That rear engine being back there and all that, you know what I mean? I know some might argue and say it's hotter back there. I would say it's cooler. You're getting all that turbulent air now whipping around the car, and now, you know, it's cooling. And now by the time it come off the back end of the car, it's at a cooler position now because it's been, you know, stirred up by the time it comes across the car. It's almost like the front end is blowing air on the back end. By the way, God is good. Torah Harabah, you know what I mean? Shalom. You know, it's fucking Saturday. We all say a prayer. Thanks to the Lord. All praises to the Most High. See, man, that goddamn Phantom is huge.
My joints hurt. I was afraid things were going to get worse.
Look how big that bitch is. That's a big bitch, y'all. That's what I might get, man. I might get this one, dog.
To the car. And it is a lovely looking car. It is in beautiful special paint job, which is called
this is the
Kashmir
one,
White
dog.
Designo Magno, which in simple is a
They don't even make this car like this. That's the GT. But the GT too small. The other one is too big. Motherfucking S is just right. Look at that bad boy. That's her right there. That's her right there.
This is for the key, 12-volt socket, and we can see the two cup holders. These are shortcuts for the seats, navigation, radio, hazard lights, media, telephone, and car settings, Parktronic. This is for the exhaust, and this is for the AMG ride control for the suspension, dynamic select. You can change these driving modes depending how you want to drive. So race mode is the most aggressive, and sport plus sport, comfort, individual. Race, you can see here everything is on race. So sport plus and race, difference is that the powertrain is race or dynamic. And also, so yeah, really gorgeous this vehicle. And yeah, as I said, these or GT 4-door, I'm not sure which I like more. This is like aggressive beauty, and GT 4-door is like more aggressive and also beauty. So yeah, I don't know. Here, this is also heated, so this panel, and also this one is heated for your comfort. Also seats are heated, everything is heated basically, so you don't freeze, as because I don't like cold. And you can also open these from either side. So if you press here, it will open for you, and here you have wireless charging for a phone, and just a storage space and some USB ports. But you can open these also, it's like a magic. check this out. You can open this also. Here is this button is here as well, so you can open it,
the one right here, man.
and the passenger can open it as well. So how great is this?
Okay, that goddamn GT though. They got the 4-door GT. Which one is that one? The GT. That's not the one I think. I like that Ferrari Puma. Hold on now, I might have to get a Ferrari.
Hello guys, Ivan here, and this is the GT 4-door 63S. Just something crazy. This is the key fob with the floater backrest in the back. We can check out this car in full review, exterior, interior and exhaust. So as you heard, exhaust is crazy on this car. It fires, and it's even more crazier in person than on the video. So I always smile when I hear this car. Yeah, overall I really like how this car looks, even without the aerodynamic package, but with the aerodynamic package it looks even better.
That shit look ugly. Them shit
So yeah, you can extend.
God, dog. That's why I'm like
Spoiler.
kind of not a fan of these Mercedes, man.
So here we have
They be fucking rounded as shit. Shouts out to if you ever had a Mercedes. Okay, that Ferrari. Matter of fact, nigga might get a Maserati. Is there a new Maserati? They ain't got no new Maseratis. Oh, whoa, okay. What the fuck? They got a new Mazzy? I might get a Maserati. Oh, I'm like, oh, okay. I might have to get a Maserati. Hold on, boy. It's about time. They don't got that motherfucker quadro. The Ghibli, what's it? The Ghibli? This is not the Quadrofolio. No, that's Alfa Romero. The Gran Torino. That's a Gran. They don't got the new Gran Torino. Oh, the Gran Turismo. That's what it was. That motherfucking Maserati Gran Turismo. Okay, that Maserati. man. That's Maserati. I feel like the Maserati has got a 1 point towards Maserati. Let's see what this fucking Porsche looking like. I like this Porsche. The Porsche Stinger. Sting your ass. Buzz, I'm a Stinger. Waspinator. Waspinator terrorize. Waspinator. Waspinator terrorize.
The Mercedes S-Class, the world's best-selling full-sized luxury saloon, has always stood for the ultimate in automotive opulence. This 7th generation version is one of the most advanced motorcars the Stuttgart maker has ever built, and aims to redefine exactly what modern luxury means for this very different age. No longer is an S-Class merely about comfort, refinement and performance. This Mark 7 W223 series model also prioritises electrification, digitalisation and connectivity. There's never been a boardroom-level luxury saloon quite like it.
The Mercedes S-Class. It's traditionally been the sensible answer to the question that every motoring expert likes to dodge: what's the best car in the world? Other vehicles can be more opulent, faster or better to drive, but over the years no other model has so consistently delivered such a technologically advanced blend of automotive virtues. Here we're looking at the 7th generation W223 series model. No previous S-Class has ever been as complex, advanced or sophisticated as this one, and it's had to be developed in the shadow of the model that may one day take over its role at the top of the Mercedes range, the all-electric EQS. For the time being though, this W223 series S-Class continues to set fresh standards. Indeed, Mercedes is claiming that a bigger technological step forward has been taken here than any made with this model line since the S-Class, or the Sonderklasse badging, was first introduced in the original W116 series model back in 1972. The direct lineage of this model line actually goes back further to the W187 series Model 220, with which Mercedes re-entered the upper luxury segment in 1951, a car that gained S designation in 1956 and formed the basis for a model line which, by the time of the launch of this Mark 7 S-Class in late 2020, had generated over 4 million global sales for the brand. This current car has a tougher brief than any of its predecessors. At its entry point, it has to satisfy successful top-level managers, while at the other end of the lineup, the same design with greater power and opulence has to be good enough to meet the exalted expectations of the Rolls-Royce and Bentley buyers that the Stuttgart maker aims to snare with the exclusive Mercedes-Maybach brand. To achieve all this, this car will have to be groundbreaking, but then the S-Class always has been. Our models like this are basically state-of-the-art test beds for the best that their brands can produce. Now, some features will, of course, forever be limited to plutocratic purses, but many others will eventually filter down into the everyday mainstream, and there are plenty of examples of that. The first generation W116 series version pioneered anti-lock brakes in 1978, while the second generation W126 series model introduced airbags in 1981. The ESP stability control system, which every modern car now has, was originally pioneered by the third generation W140 series S-Class in 1995, while active suspension, that was introduced with the fourth generation W220 series design in 1999. Hybrid engines arrived with the fifth generation W221 series model of 2005, and this current car's direct predecessor, the W222 series S-Class of 2013, that was the first of many cars to feature only energy-saving LED technology for all exterior and interior lights. Which brings us to the technology being showcased here, not all of which, sadly, we're being offered in the UK. But there's still plenty to marvel at, from the 3D instrument screen to the self-driving tech, from the augmented reality head-up display to digital headlamps that can project messages onto the tarmac in front of you. All of this, Mercedes tells us, is what modern luxury now means. Are they right? Is this still the finest car in the world? And should you want one more than a rival BMW 7 Series, Audi A8, Porsche Panamera or Maserati Quattroporte? To properly find out, you're going to need the industry's most comprehensive road test film, the Car and Driving Road Test Review. The S-Class epitomizes Mercedes. It was around long before the brand started selling SUVs, MPVs, crossovers and pickups, and it still defines the brand better than any other model in the lineup. In creating this 7th generation version, the directive to the engineers was exactly the same as it's always been with this flagship contender: build the best car in the world. So what on earth might be awaiting us here? The front of cabin experience, part luxury limo, part Starship Enterprise. A car that can drive itself? Well, yes, this 7th generation S-Class can do that, although currently it isn't allowed to, not under UK legislation at the time of this test anyway. So if you want to bring forward the inevitable start of the autonomous driving era, you'll have to content yourself instead with standing outside the thing and parking it with your phone. Here though, it's about driving and what Mercedes has done to underline this S-Class model's hard-won status for being the luxury limo which sets the journeying standard for boardroom buyers, ferrying the people who matter between their meetings, their makeovers and their mistresses. Power up, and the silence, even with the diesel up front, is striking. Will the rest of the drive experience follow suit? Of course it will. Should the whim strike you, the throttle can be buried into the velour carpet and the legal maximum can be crested like a hot hatch, but that wouldn't be all that elegant, would it? Not unless you're a chauffeur who's avoiding a hijack or your boss in the back is late for his Learjet takeoff slot anyway. Now, assuming that that isn't the case, then you'll want instead to settle in and drive this car as it was intended to be driven, wafting around on the low-speed torque of the inline 6-cylinder engines that you now have to have with the conventional versions of this 7th generation design. At such speeds, the experience on offer remains a particularly special one, even by the opulent standards of the boardroom segment. Mercedes even once put out a release that cited research they'd done suggesting that when you travelled by S-Class, your pulse rate was actually likely to be lower than in any other rival. That may or may not be true, of course, but there's absolutely no doubt as to the sense of well-being that you get as you take in the sophisticated and classy dashboard, you sink deeper into seats that feel as if they've been tailored to fit you, and you wonder absently if you're ever going to completely master how this massively complex Mercedes actually works. Throughout, there's a reassurance that you're in the most thoroughly engineered luxury saloon that money can buy. Now, specified correctly, it doesn't actually need your help when it's being driven or parked, but if you do choose to assume control, it'll cosset you in a way that very few cars at any price can. That's the S-Class way. It's been over half a century since we first saw a car that was sold as the S-Class, and every generation since has introduced groundbreaking innovations. Mercedes wants to reassure you that that also features here, which is why the instrument display ahead of you twinkles in 3D and the ambient lighting flashes with the safety features. Pioneering engineering of greater substance, though, seems limited either to safety, the world's first rear seat frontal airbag, or level 3 or level 4 autonomous drive development, which, as we mentioned earlier on, the UK's legislation and parking infrastructure isn't quite ready for yet. Although you can now use the level 3 stuff in situations of high traffic density on certain limited sections of German highway at up to 37 miles an hour. Meanwhile, rivals in the segment developing rear axle steering, suspension camera scan and active body control systems will be pleased to hear that from launch anyway. The Stuttgart brand is restricting those to the plutocratically expensive Mercedes Maybach versions of this model for our market. It also doesn't seem very limo-like that the volume version of this car perambulates around using an engine that many a middle manager would choose for his C-Class, the 3-litre inline 6-cylinder diesel, which is fitted to the S350D variant that we're trying here. This unit's 286 braked horses also seem a touch inefficient for a saloon over 2 tons in weight. and although it does respond rapidly enough to your right foot, 62 takes 6.4 seconds en route to a limited 155 miles an hour maximum, which all S-classes share. It can't rapidly build speed without affecting cabin calm in the way that other engines in the range more easily can. There are 3 of these in the mainstream range. The first alternative is the same diesel unit uprated to 330 horsepower and S400D status, in which guise it gains 4MATIC four-wheel drive and 100 Nm pulling power boost to 700 Nm, enough to drop the 62 miles an hour sprint to 5.4 seconds. Otherwise, your S-Class will be petrol-powered and it'll feature some degree of electrification, either of the token kind in the S500 4MATIC, whose 435 horsepower 6-cylinder petrol unit features the brand's EQ Boost mild hybrid tech, or of the full Monty sort, the rear-driven S580E plug-in variant uses the same engine in 367 horsepower form and mates it with a 150 horsepower electric motor. Petrol V8s, in case you're wondering, for our market anyway, they're restricted to the high-performance Mercedes-AMG S63E and S73E variants, which were not announced at the time of this test in autumn 2021, which get a 4-litre twin-turbo with plug-in tech. We're not really sure why you'd ever need one of those, because the S500 4MATIC actually has an AMG-developed engine, one familiar to us from the road-burning 53 model derivatives of the E-Class, and able to propel this Mercedes to 62 in 4.9 seconds. That's almost as fast as a Porsche 911. With this, there's a huge rush of pulling power from about 1800 RPM onwards, at which point 520 Nm of torque is developed from the potent combination of Borg-Warner electrically driven supercharger and twin-scroll turbocharger. And if you need a particularly rapid overtake, the S500's mild hybrid EQ boost system provides a further 250 Nm of torque, as well as 22 horsepower of extra power for short periods. With an extra 340 kilos of weight to carry around, the S580E PHEV variant won't feel quite as rapid as that, but it does still crest 62 in 5.2 seconds, and its party piece is a 63-mile all-electric driving range, which is nearly double what, at the time of this test, you'd get from a rival plug-in BMW 7 Series and Audi A8.
Some Mercedes models are the epitome of on-road luxury. Others are almost unrivaled for off-road prowess. And then there's one which claims to offer the best of both, the GLS. This is one of the very few super luxury SUVs that can seat 7 fully sized adults, and it claims to be able to do so while offering a properly dynamic drive on road as well as extreme capability off it. This is the 3rd generation design in this model line, and it claims to be smarter, plusher, more refined and even more appealing than before. The GLS is a model that Mercedes bills as the S-Class of SUVs. Here's the 3rd generation X167 series version. It's a luxury conveyance for those whose real, or more likely imagined, commute to the everyday world is from a craggy mountaintop. We first saw this design back in 2007 when it was launched as the GL class, built in America for global sale, but primarily seen since occupying super-sized shopping mall spaces from New York to New Orleans. At that X164 series model's introduction, there were plenty of experts predicting that a GL would be too large for our market, but not for the first time they were wrong. Buyers realised sooner than journalists did that this Mercedes could offer something that you couldn't get on a rival 7-seat Audi Q7 or Volvo XC90 luxury SUV, namely proper space in the rearmost 3rd seating row for 2 fully sized adults. So, Mercedes sold more GLs than they'd expected to in Europe, as sales momentum continued with the launch of a second-generation X166 series version in late 2012. It was practical, luxurious, and could go almost anywhere. But whether, as promised, it was the S-Class of SUVs was still more debatable. A GL Class might be more spacious and versatile than a similarly priced Range Rover, but it simply didn't offer the same exclusive upmarket feel. The Stuttgart brand had convinced itself that this model could do that, though, and set to work to prove the point. That Mark II GL was updated and rebadged as the GLS in 2016, but the real step forward came in 2019 with a completely new generation X167 series design, this car. Also badged GLS, but luxuriously redesigned in almost every conceivable way. By now, though, the idea of supersizing the large luxury 7-seat SUV concept had been copied by another brand, BMW, with its X7, another US-built and targeted model that offers this GLS its most direct segment challenge. But thanks to a wheelbase increase for this generation design, this Mercedes is a little longer and wider, and perhaps that bit more aspirational. There's even a version, the Mercedes Maybach GLS, that seeks sales in the exclusive SUVIP sector amongst Bentley Bentegas and Rolls-Royce Cullinans. The GLS is, in short, the car that brings together everything Mercedes knows about luxury and SUV motoring into one very complete and potentially very desirable package. And we're going to test it. Not everyone is going to feel comfortable piloting something of this size, but provided you do, then GLS motoring is a pretty fabulous way to view your everyday world. The great all-round visibility that you get from your lofty perch behind the wheel makes manoeuvrability a lot more straightforward than you might expect, and in any case, other road users tend to scatter as you bear down upon them. Now, there are, in theory, two models on offer, but given that one of them, the Mercedes-AMG 63 4MATIC Plus, has a thirsty 4-litre petrol V8 installed up front, in practice, almost all sales will be of the GLS 400D diesel variant that we're trying here. If you happen to be familiar with the previous generation X166 series GLS, then you'll be expecting a few mechanical changes, given the way that model was merely a lightly evolved version of a design originally launched way back in 2012. Sure enough, there's a stiffer, more sophisticated all-new MHA, that's modular high architecture platform. And the diesel engine on offer here is also different, now a straight 6, and now putting out 330 horsepower, 72 horsepower more than the previous shaped GLS 350D could manage. The way that it transmits torque to tarmac's different too, and much more sophisticated. The old model had a fixed 50-50 torque split front to rear. This time round, power delivery is variable between the axles, generally defaulting to rear-wheel drive on tarmac, but able, on demand, to shift up to 50% of torque frontwards via a clever centre differential. You can monitor this via a special 4MATIC display selectable on the instrument binnacle screen. We're told that this GLS apparently is one of Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton's favourite choices from the Mercedes model line when it comes to selecting his company car. Presumably, that's because he wants something completely opposite to the kind of thing he'd drive in his day job. This GLS fits that brief perfectly. As to be fair, you'd expect, given its sheer bulk and 2.5-ton weight. To try and help matters, there's the brand's usual dynamic select driving mode system with comfort or sport driving modes, plus an off-road option, we'll get to that, and an individual menu that'll allow you to choose your own drive parameters. Now, there's no auto setting to make all the decisions for you, though. As usual, the dynamic select settings adjust steering feel, throttle response and gearshift timings from the super smooth 9-speed 9G-tronic auto transmission. Plus, in this case, they also alter ride quality from the Airmatic air suspension system, which is fitted as standard on all models imported for our market. The Sport mode will prompt the Airmatic suspension to reduce ride height by 15 millimeters, which will happen whatever setting you're in at cruising speeds in order to improve the aerodynamics. But the improvement of ride quality is obviously the main focus, with the adaptive damping built into the Airmatic setup. With Dynamic Select set in comfort, this initially seems pleasingly supple, if not anything like as pillowy soft as in an S-Class, but it gets more upset by harsher surfaces and things like speed humps than would a rival BMW X7, though that's partly because this Mercedes rides on slightly bigger wheels. The Stuttgart engineers have a fix for this, a road surface scan feature that scans the road ahead with a stereoscopic camera as you drive, priming the suspension for bumps even before you reach them. We've tried it on an S-Class and it works brilliantly, which makes it all the more annoying that you can't specify this system on GLS models bound for our market. Other countries get road surface scan as part of an optional E-Active body control package, which also includes something else we can't have, a curve tilting function, which basically replicates the active anti-roll bars that you can have fitted to that rival BMW X7 to reduce lateral body roll. What Mercedes hasn't developed for any of its markets is the kind of four-wheel steering system you can have on that rival X7, and when so equipped, the BMW feels more manoeuvrable at low city speeds as a result. Out of town, traction and body control's better than you'd think it might be from such a high-sided 2.6-ton SUV. The big, well-calibrated brakes, with discs that measure up to 400 millimeters in diameter, are progressive, positive and reassuring. And you waft pleasurably about on a 700 Newton-meter wave of torque, which sees the 62-mile-an-hour sprint dispatched in just 6.3 seconds. That's as quick as a Fiesta ST hot hatch, en route to 148 miles an hour. Figures like that make you wonder why anyone would feel the need to stretch on further to the 612 horsepower Mercedes-AMG GLS 63 4MATIC Plus petrol V8 version. But if you do, you can improve those readings to 4.2 seconds and 155 miles an hour, or 174 miles an hour in the executive version that features an AMG driver's package, which removes the usual speed limit restrictor. This performance petrol engine now features Mercedes' mild hybrid 48-volt electrified technology, which uses an integrated EQ boost starter alternator. It combines a starter motor and an alternator in a single powerful electric motor, compactly integrated between the engine and the bespoke AMG Speed Shift TCT 9-speed auto transmission. Now, this develops an extra 22 horsepower of output and 250 newton meters of extra torque for particularly quick sprints from standstill or fast overtaking. Plus, the starter alternator can also provide hybrid functions like energy recuperation, gliding at cruising speeds and restarting the engine as part of the start-stop function. Now, all of this will probably be of cursory interest to likely AMG 63 customers, who will probably be more interested in the fact that this wild derivative also has bespoke AMG tuning for the suspension, the brakes and the performance exhaust, which will entertain you with an array of snaps and crackles as you exercise this model's prodigious 850 Newton-meter reserve of torque. But let's get back to the core GLS 400D diesel variant we're focusing on here. We should talk about this car's off-road capability. There's much more of it here than can be had with that BMW X7 model we keep mentioning, even in the standard model form we have here. Earlier, we mentioned the off-road Dynamic Select driving mode, which optimizes all of the car's systems for off-piste driving and raises the Airmatic suspension by 60 millimeters. This mode also activates specific mud plugging settings for the ABS, stability and traction control systems. And there's a selectable inclinometer in the instrument binnacle display. If you want to regularly off-road in this car, though, you'll want to pay the extra for the optional off-road package. This pack includes a feature normally quite unknown in luxury SUV circles for any product without a Land Rover badge, a low-range gearbox, which allows nearly triple the torque acting on each wheel for optimum traction. Plus, it also gives you hill descent control. Mercedes calls it downhill speed regulation, along with, for really difficult terrain, an extra selectable Off-Road Plus setting in the Dynamic Select driving mode system, which can automatically raise the car by up to 90 millimeters based on terrain slope or wheel articulation.
They got a story about niggas leaving your cars
Other
on.
off-road package features include extra torque on demand technology, both for the traction and dynamic control systems, and for the clutch, which offers interaxle locking, able to alter distribution of drive torque from 0 to 100% between the axles. The package also includes a special look through the bonnet camera angle that at low speed shows rocks and bumps directly in front of the vehicle. And there's also a special off-road light, this a mode in the multi-beam LED headlight repertoire that delivers a particularly wide, bright light distribution so that you can more easily spot dangerous obstacles at night. There's also an innovative off-road score app in the MBUX infotainment system, which scores you on your off-road prowess, while offering you tips to do things better. It's then possible for someone else to drive the same course and to try and match your scores, which might be fun if you've a competitive all-wheel drive streak. However you specify your GLS, the 500mm wading depth remains. That's well below the 900mm figure you get from a Range Rover. By the way, you might be tempted by the off-road package if you'll be using your GLS for towing, which would be sensible, but bear in mind that it will reduce towing capacity from 3.5 tonnes to 3.3 tonnes.
I know, right?
A retractable tow bar comes as standard here and is fitted complete with the brand's clever trailer manoeuvring assist technology. At up to 3 miles an hour, this can control your steering angle while you're reversing backwards while hitched up, as you monitor progress via dynamic guidelines shown as an additional part of the rear view camera display. That's one little touch you might like, and there are lots of others. The car wash function, which folds in the mirrors and moves the suspension to its highest position so that the wheel arches can be properly cleaned. The Magic Vision control wipers, which use washer fluid warmed by engine coolant so that you get a clearer screen. The panoramic glass roof that adjusts its opening with vehicle speed to reduce buffeting. The climate system that switches to recirculation mode in a tunnel. The rear LED tail lamps that automatically adjust their brilliance to suit ambient lighting conditions so as to avoid dazzling following drivers, and the multi-beam LED headlamps that liaise with the navigation system to automatically adapt to right or left-hand traffic when crossing a country border. Someone's really thought about the ownership usability of this car. Whatever GLS variant you choose and whatever form you specify it in, as with all large luxury SUVs, the highway is where this Mercedes is in its element, aided by a standard active distance assist Distronic feature that draws from GPS live traffic data, which enables it to recognise and respond to tailback and slow-moving traffic even before you reach it. Now, you get this as part of an included driving assistance package, which, amongst other things, also includes active steering assist, which will basically do most of the steering for you in traffic or at a cruise. Plus, there's route-based speed adjustment, which, once you've programmed in a navigation destination, can automatically adapt your speed to the curves, roundabouts and junctions that you'll encounter throughout your journey. It's all very reassuring. So it's big, Of course it is, even more so than the car it replaces, which already was large enough to make your neighbours question their right to light restrictions. This third generation X167 series design is longer, wider and higher than its predecessor. But the key change is an extra 60 millimetres of wheelbase, which means there's now well over 3.1 metres between the wheels. Size matters, of course, in this segment. At 5.21 metres, this GLS may not be quite as long as an S-Class, but importantly it's a fraction bigger than its key BMW X7 rival. And it's way bigger than Mercedes' pricier G-Class model, a comparative minnow at 4.6 metres. Even a long wheelbase Range Rover is 7 millimetres shorter. In other words, you'll need quite a sizable garage. Having said all that, this time round the design is more effective in concealing its bulk, thanks to looks that are now quite sleek for something so huge and boxy. Mercedes design chief Gordon Wagoner reckons it has elegance reminiscent of a classic luxury saloon. We still think it's very much a supersized SUV. But now a far more imposing one. A more purposeful look comes courtesy of a twin power dome bonnet that flows down into a nearly upright radiator grille that'll be quite different depending on whether you've decided on this normal GLS 400D variant or the alternative Mercedes-AMG GLS 63 performance model. Unless you happen to own an oil well, you're more likely to want this mainstream diesel version, which has a twin louvered silver grille with diamond-shaped black patterning. This is flanked by piercing multi-beam LED headlights, which include daytime running lights, featuring 3 LED segments, a motif borrowed from the S-Class. And they also feature integrated fog lamps, where those would normally be is instead a short, subtle chrome strip on each side. A prominent chrome skid plate in the front apron adds a finishing touch. From the side, you really do get an idea of the scale of this piece of Stuttgart real estate. A steeply raked windscreen, generously sculpted arched surfaces, and a large glass house combined with this strong shoulder line and this distinct lower mid-level crease that gives the flanks some shape. And, predictably, the wheels are huge. You can have rims on this car bigger than are available on any other Mercedes, up to 23 inches in size, which fill arches framed by flush-fitted liners. Little touches like this neat small kink upwards near the rear D-pillar help to make the overall look seem a little less bulky. As before, the effect is finished off with silver roof rails and aluminium running boards featuring rubber studs and jewel-like LED illumination. It's imposing from the back too, a powerful shoulder muscle extending from the rear doors to the two-piece LED tail lights with three-dimensional signatures, lamps linked by this central chrome strip. The reflectors are now relocated lower down, each just above large exhaust tailpipes, which are framed by this wide silver skid plate. Again, the look of the Mercedes-AMG GLS 63 variant, should you choose it, will be slightly different here. That model featuring a bespoke AMG rear apron with two rectangular, characteristically corrugated twin tailpipes. As usual, of course, what's more important is the stuff you can't see. In this case, a structure that's certainly more S-Class than G-Wagon, using the brand's modular high architecture platform, which is basically a lightly evolved SUV version of the MRA, or modular rear architecture underpinnings used by the latest S-Class and by E-Class and C-Class models too. This structure is so stiff that Mercedes has been able to incorporate the segment's largest ever panoramic glass roof while still improving torsional rigidity. So, what kind of interior should a car like this have? Opulent, obviously, but S-Class-like? Is the luxury cabin of a boardroom-level limousine really appropriate to the lifestyle of a properly capable family SUV? Mercedes obviously doesn't think so, because behind the wheel here it doesn't really feel S-Class-like at all, which, as just suggested, might of course be completely appropriate given this car's rather different remit. You might still, though, be a touch disappointed to find it basically exactly the same here as it would be in the company's much cheaper GLE SUV model. A rival BMW X7 falls into the same trap by borrowing most of the cabinware from a lesser X5. In both cases, the Range Rover rivaling pretensions are somewhat undermined as a result. But apart from novelty value and exclusivity, is there any real need for the bespoke cabin architecture that would have added so much to the bottom line price here? What's on offer is so luxuriously presented that you could argue not. The dash and fascia design doesn't have the dramatic, futuristic appeal of the latest S-Class, but compensation comes with this GLS model's much more commanding perch. You're quite cocooned here thanks to this high centre console, and you're surrounded by some lovely touches like these 4 rectangular silver air vents inset into this classy trimming panel. Everything's immaculately finished with a very high-end blend of stitched leather, open-pore wood and aluminium accents, and seems to have been generally very well assembled by the American Alabama factory in Tuscaloosa. The raised centre console contrasts with the free-floating appearance of the dashboard, and as with the GLE, incorporates 2 prominent grab handles trimmed with Artico man-made leather and aluminium inserts. These are artfully illuminated at night, part of a gorgeous ambient lighting system that uses coloured optical fibres in the fascia and in the doors to really bring the cabin to life after dark. But it's the screen tech that'll particularly grab your attention. As usual in large models from the Stuttgart brand, the central element in the dash design is a distinctively styled instrument panel which incorporates a 12.3-inch instrument cluster and a central media display the same size. Both monitors housed behind a shared continuous glass surface. This impressive MBUX system has many infotainment functions, including Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, smartphone mirroring, and an in-car office section that'll read texts and emails for you. MBUX is also your portal into the standard 13-speaker Burmester premium sound system, and there's a brilliant 3D advanced navigation setup complete with what Mercedes calls augmented reality technology. This is effectively a live camera feed of the road ahead, overlaid with house numbers, road names, direction arrows and other useful bits of information that'll help you find your way. All the MBUX functions can be controlled in various ways, the obvious ones being screen touch and use of this big central touchpad between the seats, plus there are smaller thumbnail pads on the wheel spokes, and you've other activation options too. Gesture control is standard, and there's the brand's Hey Mercedes voice control system, which in our estimation is a setup currently rivaled only by BMW for intuitive responsiveness. Conventional voice control technology usually requires certain specific voice commands from users, but this system's Linguatronic natural speech recognition is pretty good at understanding, well, almost anything you ask of it. It's particularly good at things like finding new radio stations or telling you what the weather is at programmed destinations. Overall, this MBUX Mercedes-Benz user experience multimedia setup is supposed to take in-car connectivity to a new level, and it's certainly difficult to fault, though we think this central touchpad, though well designed, isn't quite as easy to use as the lower rotary iDrive controller in a rival BMW X7. This big touchpad deals with the various menus of the high-resolution media display just above, divided into radio, nav, phone, media, comfort and info segments, plus one for the various apps you'll be able to access, most notably the useful Mercedes Me setup. And if you scroll down further, you can access some of the various so-called themes: adventure, trip, experience, efficiency and lounge, which combine preset layout and colour styles so that you can quickly change the cabin ambience to suit your mood. There are some really sophisticated graphics in play across the menus of this monitor, especially when it comes to the real-time displays that you'll find in the vehicle section. The same functionality can be accessed via another tinier touchpad on the left-hand spoke of the Smart Sports steering wheel, and if you use that to access a provided center screen settings menu, you'll be able to customize the separate digital instrument monitor ahead of you via various design layout choices. There's normal blue-tinged classic, yellow-themed sport, an orange progressive dial display, and a darker minimalistic understated setup. Once you've decided what you want, you can use the other provided tiny touchpad on the right-hand steering wheel spoke to tailor the instrument cluster screen and bring what you'd most like to see into regular view, which is possible because the two virtual dials are both customizable. The left one normally shows the speedometer, but can also show either an analog clock, trip computer info, a trip itinerary screen, audio info, or off-road driving angles and compass settings. While the right-hand dial normally shows a rev counter, but can also show consumption info, a proactive eco display to aid efficient driving, GPS mapping, a G-force readout, safety assistance info, the status of the 4MATIC four-wheel drive system, and AirMatic air suspension settings. Finally, you can also tailor the area between the dials, the centre part of the instrument binnacle screen, where you have a choice of viewing a digital speedo, consumption info, that eco display, trip info, or a full screen option. What else? Well, the ergonomics aren't quite perfect. You'll initially be hunting for the starter button. It's curiously positioned down here by your left knee. There are some signs of volume production that you wouldn't get in a Range Rover. The panels for climate control and overhead lighting flex when you prod them, for instance. And if you happen to have forked out nearly £100,000 for an upper spec version of this car, the rather flimsy column-mounted transmission stalk it shares with a Mercedes Sprinter van might not be quite the kind of thing you'd have been expecting. What else? Well, despite the lofty seating position, all-round visibility could be a fraction better. Some might find that these relatively chunky front A-pillars slightly obscure their vision at junctions, and the relatively narrow back window and all those rear headrests will see you making frequent use of the standard 360-degree camera system and all-round sensors. The sensor info can also be projected into your line of forward sight on this standard head-up display, expanded in screen size to show far more than these kinds of setups usually do. Another standard feature we really like is the energizing package, which combines music, lighting and scent into a couple of selectable programs, Refresh and Vitality, aimed at rejuvenating you at the end of a tiresome day. There's also a training option aimed at relieving muscle strain on longer trips. Above entry-level trim, you also get an intelligent energizing coach feature that recommends individual programs based on the kind of journey that you're on. It can even communicate with a smartwatch or a fitness tracker should you be wearing one of those. Then automatically select a perfectly suited energizing theme. You can start directly just when you need it. As for cabin storage, well, there's pretty much everything that you would want. The smart slatted cover of this stowage area at the bottom of the centre stack slides back to reveal twin cup holders, a couple of USB-C ports and a wireless charging mat. Further back between the seats is another cup holder, but this one's of the thermal sort so that it can warm or cool drinks. It sits just behind this twin-lidded bin, which incorporates a further USB-C port together with the converter leads that you'll need for it. There are bottle holders in the deep door bins, the driver's one incorporating switches for the electric tailgate and the power deployable tow bar. And you get what initially looks as if it's going to be a spacious glove box, complete with a pen clip, though in actuality this is somewhat compromised in size by the need to incorporate the fragrance dispenser for the standard air balance package. You also get a storage net in the front passenger footwell and ticket clips on the sun visors, but there's no room around this dual light lighting panel for an overhead sunglasses compartment. Time to take a look in the rear. This X167 series GLS is 77mm longer than its predecessor, and the 60mm wheelbase increase we mentioned earlier means this car now has a wheelbase length 100mm longer than that of a long wheelbase S-Class, which sounds promising for backseat folk. The M-Atic suspension automatically lowers itself by 25mm when one of the doors is opened to aid getting in and out. And these wide sill steps help too, though they'll also decorate trouser legs and skirt tips with dirt. This is the part of the car where you most readily appreciate this large body shell's extra space. To be honest, the legroom can't match that of an S-Class, but there's 37mm more of it this time round, and also 7mm more headroom than there was in the previous GLS. Enough, in fact, so that 6-footers can easily be accommodated, even with this huge standard panoramic glass roof fitted, one of the biggest ever fitted to any production car. Plus, you not only get a backrest that can be adjusted for rake, but a seat base that can slide over a range of 100mm for extra knee space. All the adjustability is power operated via this switch panel on the immaculately stitched door card, which is where you can operate these powered side window blinds if they've been fitted. If there's ever a need to take 3 adult folk back here, the middle-seated person's cause will be helped by the relatively low centre transmission tunnel, above which is a pull-out compartment with twin USB-C ports sitting below the controls and the twin-provided vents for the standard 5-zone thermotronic climate system. Vents in the ceiling and B-pillar feature for that too. Plus, you get decently sized door bins, LED overhead reading lights, and easy access to the front seat's thermal cup holder. Luxury touches include wood trimming on the front seat backs and intricately fashioned Burmester speaker grills in the doors. Heated rear seats are standard, and further up the range, these outer seats are of the climatised multi-contour sort and incorporate a massaging function. Mercedes isn't, currently, offering UK customers a chance to replicate the US market and replace this second-row bench with a really luxurious 2-seat arrangement. Not in mainstream models anyway. That layout does feature in the exclusive SUVIP Mercedes Maybach GLS 600 model. But if you stretch to one of the top executive trim levels, you do get something of a sense of opulence thanks to pillowy comfort spec headrests and the option of powering the front passenger seat forward so that you can really stretch out. These top variants also include this comfort spec central armrest, which folds down to reveal an integrated MBUX 7-inch colour tablet. This can control all of the MBUX comfort and entertainment functions from anywhere in the car. Radio, TV, media, phone, web browser and so on. The armrest also includes 3 storage areas, 2 open and a lidded one with twin USB-C ports. Providing you avoid entry-level trim, you additionally get 2 11.6-inch seat-back screens, which together constitute the MBUX rear seat entertainment system, operational with Bluetooth headphones that can individually connect to every infotainment and entertainment element in the car. Finally, let's take a look at the third row. To get in, you click on this button on the seat's shoulder to activate the powered easy entry function, which then operates with arthritic slowness that'll be frustrating if you're standing waiting in the rain. Still, once the aperture to the very rear is finally revealed, access through it is far easier than is the case with a comparable 7-seat Mercedes GLE, or indeed something else like an Audi Q7 or a Volvo XC90. That's part of what you're paying for here in this larger segment model. Once you're in these rearmost pews, it'll be abundantly clear that a 5,213mm vehicle length, that's 283 millimetres longer than a GLE, still isn't quite sufficient for proper adult standards of legroom at the very back of a 7-seat SUV. Or it isn't in this one anyway. For some reason, despite the bodywork length increase, there's actually 10 millimetres less legroom back here than there was with the previous generation model. There's also fractionally less elbow and shoulder width than there was before too. All of which helps to explain why a rival BMW X7 offers more room for adults here, if that's really what you need. In a GLS, if you're above school age, you'll need to persuade those ahead of you to move their centre bench base forward a little and slightly compromise their legroom.
I like that.
But a compromise is obviously a lot easier to reach than it would be with a 7-seater from the GLE Q7 XC90 class of SUV. And unlike with most cars of that type, including the GLE, Isofix child seat fastenings are fitted back here as well as in the middle row. What else? The boxy shape means that headroom's okay. Mercedes says that folk up to 1.94 metres tall will fit. The headrests, which dig uncomfortably into your back when you first get in, are very stiff to adjust upwards. But the seats are of the proper thick kind, rather than the space-saver sort that tends to be fitted to 7-seat SUVs in the class below. And you're reasonably looked after back here with a separate thermotronic climate zone and individual speakers that have a two-way audio system that helps you better communicate with those up front. There are also curtain airbags that extend across the decently sized side windows, a couple of USB-C ports each side and a cup holder. And on this top executive variant, the seats are heated too. Finally, let's check out the boot, accessed via this huge EasyPack gesture-controlled powered tailgate. With all 7 seats upright, there's actually more room than you'd expect. 355 litres measured to the parcel shelf, that's 60 litres more than the previous generation model could offer, 29 litres more than a BMW X7, and nearly as much as you get in the boot of a Golf. That's partly due to the surprising amount of space you get beneath the boot floor, easily enough to allow the parcel shelf to fit in down here. There's not enough space for any sort of temporary spare wheel though. Having to rely on a fiddly tyre repair kit seems unforgivable in an SUV this capable. You lump your stuff in over this impractical chrome-covered loading lip, but getting heavy items in will be aided by the way that you can lower the air suspension by 50 millimetres via this right-hand cargo sidewall button. Further buttons on both sidewalls deal with electric seat retraction. Neatly, there's an all button on the left-hand side that flattens everything if you want to create a kind of VIP removal van in a single hit. We'll get to that. The switch gear to flatten the third row chairs is here on the right, and when these disappear into the floor, up to 890 litres of space is created, measured to the parcel shelf, 21 litres more than before. Apparently, 4 golf bags will easily fit with this configuration. Because the second row seat backs can be altered in angle, it's also possible to make them a touch more upright. Mercedes calls this the cargo position, which could make all the difference when you're trying to get suitcases in on, say, an airport run. And the 40-20-40 split of the second row backrest means that longer items like skis can easily be accommodated without disturbing a couple of rear-seated folk. If you go further and use these left-hand cargo sidewall buttons to fold down the second row seats, the GLS again reasserts its advantage over all its rivals. Though the retracted seats don't go completely flat, they fold to reveal an enormous 2,400 litre capacity that's 280 litres more than a BMW X7 and around 450 litres more than you'd get in, say, an XC90 or a Q7. You also get nearly 2.22 metres of cargo area length, 90 millimetres more than the previous generation model could offer. There's nothing that can match it. At the time of this test in autumn 2020, GLS model pricing for the mainstream 400D diesel variant that we're looking at here started at around £77,000. for this car in base AMG line premium trim. You'll need about £8,000 more for the mid-range AMG line Premium Plus version, which will take you up to around £85,000. And a budget of nearly £94,000 is required for the plushest Premium Plus executive derivative that we're looking at here. Want another mainstream engine? At the time of this test in autumn 2020, there was no sign of that. Other markets get a lesser GLS 350D diesel variant with 286 horsepower and a GLS 580 V8 petrol model with 489 horsepower. But there was no sign as we completed this film that Mercedes would offer those derivatives here. The performance-orientated V8 petrol-powered Mercedes-AMG GLS 63 4MATIC Plus model is offered for our market in a couple of black-trimmed Night Edition forms. The standard Night Edition variant costs around £122,000, while the even plusher Night Edition Executive model pushes that asking price up to just over £130,000. If only the ultimate GLS variant will do, then you'll be one of the rare individuals tempted by the Mercedes Maybach GLS 600 4MATIC model, which commands an asking price of around £180,000. Yes, really. This variant gets its own bespoke look and its own bespoke interior, as you'd expect it would for that kind of money. In terms of where that positions this mainstream GLS 400D diesel model in the Mercedes lineup, think in terms of this black pump-fueled GLS costing around £12,000 more than an equivalent GLE model. That's the price premium for, say, a GLS 400D AMG line Premium Plus over an equivalent GLE 400D 7-seat AMG line Premium Plus model. If you're wondering, Mercedes' other large 5-seat SUV, the G-Class, cost at the time of this test from around £96,000 in G350D AMG line form. If you're persuaded by all the S-Class of SUVs style marketing, you might also want to know that a conventional Mercedes S-Class saloon is priced from about the same level as a base GLS, from just under £80,000, but if you wanted to match spec with spec, you'd find that an S-Class would probably cost you around £8,000 more. In terms of rivals for this GLS 400D from other brands, the main one, as we've been saying throughout this film, is the BMW X7. At the time of this test, the base xDrive 40D diesel X7 variant cost around £75,000, around £2,000 less than the base AMG line premium version of this Mercedes. Most X7 customers, though, choose an xDrive 40D with plusher M Sport trim, which at the time of this test cost around £78,000, around £7,000 less than a mid-range GLS 400D AMG line Premium Plus model.
What kind of car?
A Range Rover isn't really a direct...
What's going on YouTube? So 10 years ago, electric cars did not have the best reputations. Most of them were known as weird, slow, and boring vehicles that simply did not have any aspirational appeal. However, that reality is totally gone these days. And what I'm standing next to is proof of that. This is the all-new Lucid Air. This brand new company has created a brand new luxury sedan designed not only to go against the Model S, but also against traditional luxury players like the S-Class. So, have they succeeded in that mission, or have they bitten off more than they can chew? Let's go ahead and find out. Alright, so let's start off here by taking a look at the exterior design. Now, right off the bat, I think this is an area that Lucid has really nailed because, like I said at the intro, a lot of automakers in the past have thought that to be an electric vehicle you had to make it look really weird and make it scream, I'm an EV. But I really appreciate that Lucid has not really done that. It still looks very futuristic, don't get me wrong, but it's also very simple and minimalistic. So you'll notice up here in the front with the grille, we don't have actually a lot going on. We have this small slit here. We've got 2 pieces of a brushed aluminum that run through the front area, and that basically forms the main part of your fascia. Although you do, on the lower part, have a little area here, of course, to get some airflow into the battery packs. Now, nicely integrated right into the face itself are going to be these premium looking LED headlights. As you can see, they're very narrow and thin, and we have, it looks like 6 different bulbs here. Of course, this is, pretty typical of most luxury vehicles, but one thing that's really cool about the Lucid is the fact that it integrates in with this thin light bar that runs across the entire front to give you these really cool entry and exit animations as you walk up to the car or leave the vehicle. And then separated down below that, you do have your LED turn signal indicator. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at our wheels. So you do have several different choices between the different trim levels that you can choose. It's going to start with 19-inch alloys, then you've got selections of 20 and 21-inch alloys. We have the 21s, which look phenomenal. I love the way these look. Again, it's not over-styled, but it's very sporty and sophisticated looking at the same time. And of course, 21 is a quite large size for a sedan. It really fills out the wheel wells nicely. We also have these wrapped in pretty aggressive Pirelli P0 tires. And let's move on up here to our mirrors. You'll notice that the finish on these are going to be silver. That's going to match with the roof, which Mason's going to talk about in just a second. And in terms of our features, we've got them all, as you'd expect. So you have heating, you have power folding, you have blind spot monitoring, and you have auto dimming abilities. Also integrated right into the mirror is going to be a small camera that's going to be facing backwards, and that does allow you to have a blind spot camera system like you find in some other brands like Kia and Hyundai. All right, so I'm opening up the charge port there to talk briefly about that. We'll give you full range and all that information later in the powertrain section, but in terms of what I want you to know now, 112 kilowatt hour battery pack, and it's got very, very fast charging, up to 300 kilowatt fast charging, which is actually good for adding 20 miles per minute at its peak charging rate. So very, very fast charging. And you'll be very impressed when you find the full specifications that we'll talk about a little later in the video in terms of the range as well.
All right, guys, so let's go ahead and talk about this Lucid Air's side design. So there are several unique elements going on here, but I want to mention the length first. We're looking at 195.8 inches in length, which does actually make this about an inch shorter than the Tesla Model S, several inches shorter than something like a Mercedes S-Class, if that's something that you may be cross-shopping this vehicle with, or an EQS. Now, as far as the design, though, there's a lot of cool elements. So, of course, we do have the pop-out door handles, which Drew will show you as we get into the interior. We have blacked-out window surrounds on all of the windows here. And then you're also going to notice that we have a platinum silver roof. This is going to be included on all but the very base Lucid Air. So I really like the design, especially when you pair it with this black color to have like the silver roof, the black paint. It really looks good. Additionally, we do have some really cool fancy Air branding, and then that's also your trim level, the Grand Touring branding. So that's super cool looking. And then working our way around to the rear design of the Lucid Air. Looks unlike really any other vehicle I've ever seen on the road, and my oh my, we have been getting a lot of attention in this Lucid Air. Everyone who drives by is taking triple looks and maybe even stopping to talk to us about it because it looks so good, namely a lot better than some cars that are also electric that have the same coefficient of drag. This is actually one of the lowest coefficient of drags. It's tied for the lowest period at 0.2. So this is a very aerodynamic vehicle, and I'm glad to see that they were able to do that while still making this look good. So let's break down some of the rear design elements. So we have Lucid spelled out across the back, and then you have your big full-length LED taillight with some silver trim down at the bottom. This taillight is absolutely beautifully designed. So like I mentioned, it's full LED. We have our LED brake light componentry. We also have our amber turn signal that's also LED. When it's actually behaving as a turn signal, it is also dynamic. So that's a nice touch that they've included in. If we drop down to the lower area, this will be your LED reverse light. Of course, this is an electric vehicle, so we do not have any exhaust pipes included. And one other design element I do want to mention here is that we do have the clamshell tailgate design. So as you can see, this is your tailgate as You'll see in the occupant section when I open it up, it actually is all one piece, so that allows for a very cohesive look here in the rear. Now let's go ahead and mention your warranty and safety information. So we'll start out with the safety information. As you would expect out of a luxury vehicle like this, they are throwing in every single one of your safety systems as standard equipment. So that's going to be forward emergency braking, pedestrian detection, lane keeping assist, auto high beams, and adaptive cruise control. Now additionally, they do offer something called Dream Drive Pro, which is your semi-autonomous driving features. It should be similar to something like Super Cruise, because actually Cadillac's engineer came over to Lucid, and that is currently you have the hardware on it for the Dream and the Grand Touring model like what we have today. It's just not fully functional yet because they have to map out the roads. Now, as far as your warranty information, we do have a 4-year, 50,000 mile basic warranty, 8-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty, so that gives you pretty good peace of mind for this Lucid in terms of your warranty. But guys, that's going to wrap up the exterior design of this Lucid Air. It is absolutely gorgeous, but I know there is a lot of beautiful features on the interior that we need to show you before we take it out on a spin.
So as you can see, as I walk up to the vehicle, you have a beautiful entry animation as it prepares for your arrival. It goes ahead and pulls the mirrors out and pops the door handles out. As far as the key fob itself, you do have a really cool key fob. It's a very thin piece of plastic, basically. It's very lightweight, and you can't really see any buttons on here, although there are capacitive touch throughout the key fob itself. Now getting inside, you're just going to grab behind the handle. It is electronic, and that will open up the door. These are also soft close doors, so you can just see it working like that. And let's check out this absolutely gorgeous looking interior for a second. And we'll go ahead and hop inside. And it should also mention that you can use your phone as the key to get inside, in addition to the key fob, of course. But let's talk about the interior color and material choices. So in terms of your materials, the base Pure model comes with a leatherette. However, all the rest of the models come with a genuine Nappa leather. That, of course, is what we have here, and it is a very, very soft and supple, absolutely beautiful design here. Lots of stitching details, very nicely shaped seat, and you do have the Lucid branding up there at the top. In terms of the different adjustments, you do have a lot of the adjustments on the seat. However, for all the additional stuff, you're going to use the center display, and that's going to allow you basically infinite number of adjustments. You also have a multi-mode massage there, so you've got those 5 different selections you can choose for both the driver and the passenger. But let's talk about the materials in the cabin as a whole, because this is an absolutely gorgeous interior with a lot of unique materials. Depending on the different trims that you choose, you can have some pretty strange and cool materials, including alpaca wool, so that's pretty interesting. However, with this Grand Touring, we have a little bit more of a traditional selection. We've got Alcantara all through the center part of the armrest area. We have a genuine open pore wood through here, real metal window switches for the 4 fully automatic windows, of course. You have the leather across the top, aluminum accenting. You're going to see that wood and Alcantara continue across the upper dash with the piping and real leather across the top. Coming down, more of the open pore wood, and then we also have in the lower area a really nice looking fabric material. Kind of reminds me of the fabric they use in some of the Volvos. And then more of the open pore wood and genuine aluminum trim. So this is overall just a absolutely stunning cabin. High quality materials all the way down to the floor. It's going to be soft touch or covered in leather. And everything in here does fit together very well. Good build quality and nice fit and finish. Alright, let's go ahead and fire it up. Of course, being an EV model and a high-tech one at that, no push button start or anything, you're just going to put your foot on the brake. And after it's all fired up, you have time to admire this beautiful 34-inch 5K curved display. So this is an absolutely stunning looking display. Obviously 5K resolution is fantastic, some of the best that you can possibly get. And it kind of has, you know, a similar look to maybe the Escalade, but I do like the fact that this is like floating, so it's only attached really behind the steering wheel. Otherwise it has this really cool fully floating effect, which I think looks really awesome. Of course, we're going to talk about all the displays and stuff thoroughly, but in terms of the one right here in front of the driver, again, plenty of information here, nice and vivid. You do have a secondary display over here. That is going to give you a lot of different options in terms of like your headlights, your windshield wipers, all that stuff. You know, being accessible right over here I think is a little bit better than being accessible in the main display, which is something kind of like how Tesla does it, so it should be a little bit easier for owners to get used to. I am a little surprised though we do not have a head-up display on board with this model. Now as we pull back here to the steering wheel, of course we have a beautiful leather wrap steering wheel. I love the design of this. It's going to be a two-spoke design, flat bottom, really thick and nice feeling in the hand. Of course, leather covered airbag cover, all the niceties. I do really like the way these buttons are arranged. So as you can see, this is like a full pass-through, and you can just like adjust your volume up and down with these toggles. And then you got the real metal buttons down here along the bottom. Of course, the wheel itself is going to be power tilt and telescoping. We also have steering wheel heating. And while I'm looking down in this area, I do want to mention the beautiful, really nice and high quality floor mats that have leather trim here and air embroidered into it. But let's go ahead and talk about interior storage. So as you would expect, since this is a very large sedan, we do have a lot of interior storage. So first, underneath our center console, this is going to be the smallest area of the bunch. We've got a little tray here. It's got the California Bear on there. And inside of that, you're going to find a small storage area, nicely felt lined. However, most of the interior storage is in other spots. So as we slide this back here, this is where you're going to find another really large storage bin right here. You've got a couple USB connections. You have two full-size cup holders located right there. And then, let's get to the real party trick though. This display, which I'll talk about in a second, actually folds completely out of the way. So how you do that is just grab this little arrow down at the bottom, slide it up, and then it just retracts right into the dash, revealing a humongous storage area. This is also rubber lined, and you can store just about anything in here, large or small objects. So really, as you can tell, a lot of storage, and I really actually like that this is enclosed, because a lot of the electric cars kind of just leave a big empty space, which is going to allow things to slide around throughout the cabin. This is going to keep everything nice and enclosed. And then, if you want the display to come back down, you're just going to press that arrow again. And as easy as that, it kind of fades back in to the picture. So, really, really cool stuff. Now, just like with a Tesla, Rivian, or many other electric vehicles, we're moving to a column-mounted shifter, which does allow you to have all that free space down there in the middle. So to operate this, very simple to use. Push down for drive, and press the opposite direction for reverse. When you go into reverse, we have a really awesome backup camera situation. So at the top here, you're going to see, you know, standard typical backup camera. You got your front and your rear parking sensors there. However, at the same time down below, we have this large display and a full 360-degree camera view. So this is humongous, and as you can see, very nice and detailed. Additionally, you can change between all the different angles, including everyone's favorite, the full like 360 drone view. Incredibly detailed. As you can see, the performance is really fast. Apparently, I can zoom into the interior. What is happening right now? Absolutely wild. You can tell that this is, you know, a very high-tech vehicle just by looking at things like this. Just a really cool and a very nice feature. Of course, you do have auto park as well when you're fully buckled up and getting ready to park. Then for park, of course, you're just going to press the P right there on the end of the stalk, and the electronic parking brake will automatically engage. Okay, so let's start discussing here with our display situation, because of course there's going to be a lot of different functions of the cabin inside of the main display. One of those functions is going to be your climate control. So you do have all of this dedicated climate control by clicking that button. However, I'm very happy to say that Lucid does give you some physical controls here, so you can bump your temperature and fan speeds for both passenger and driver, located right there with these really nice metal toggles, so you don't have to dive into the display necessarily every single time. But if you want to make adjustments with this, very simple. And as you can see, nice and responsive. That's kind of the biggest thing when it comes to touchscreens, is it's got to be nice and responsive or else it's going to be distracting. And I'm happy to say it is responsive. We do also have our 3-stage heated seats. You can change button back, and the same for 3-stage ventilation. This is where you turn on your heated steering wheel. But before we start to, really dig into the display and the infotainment software, let's talk about the other physical control. That's going to be a volume knob. And what you're going to get with this is Surreal Sound Pro. This has over 21 speakers, so you're going to be looking at a very high-end sound system, and we'll go ahead and give this a sample right now. Wow, yeah, so overall sound quality of this system is excellent. Really fills up the cabin nicely. As you saw when I panned around, you have a lot of speakers in a lot of different locations inside the cabin, and it really overall sounds great. Okay, so now let's get back to talking about the software here. I'm not going to go through every single feature because that would take basically the entire length of another video to go through. It's a very complex and high-tech system, but in terms of how these two displays work together, they're actually very well integrated together. So I'll show you basically the main gist of how this works. So if you go into something like navigation, for instance, so I got that here on the top display. However, anytime you see these little tabs here, this means this is some type of information that can pass to the lower display. So as I get back here so you can kind of see this going, I can pass this down to this lower display. That means I can use the bigger display to do things like, search, type, whatever. It's going to be more convenient for me to do that down here, obviously, than up there on the top display. And I can keep it like this with it on both displays, but if I don't want it here, I can just throw it back up there, and that piece of information will be up there. That actually applies to really a lot of different circumstances, like, for instance, our audio. We've got the Bluetooth going right there, but I can pass that down, and I can have a much larger area for me to change the settings for the different audio settings and whatnot. But the last thing I should mention is the fact that Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are not currently available on this infotainment system, although Lucid does leave the door open for future availability. Of course, we do actually have physical.
Looking at this front, guys, this is scary, I'm telling you. Looks better the front or the rear? Brabus headquarter, a G-Class and Mercedes heaven. One, go. As if it was nothing, we have a G6x6 here. I love it. Let's go. Oh! Hello guys, I am back today welcoming you all with this. This, guys, is the Brabus GLE 900 Rocket Edition, and I'm welcoming you all from the beautiful Brabus headquarter in Bottrop, guys. Look at this. This is also known as a G-Class and Mercedes heaven. for every fanboy, the place to visit. And here we will be filming the beautiful GLE 900 Brabus Rocket Edition. This thing is limited to 25 pieces worldwide. And in today's video, I will be doing a quick walk around, showing you all the exterior highlights, afterwards jumping in the interior, also giving you a nice sound check, and last but not least, drive it. So let's get right into it, guys. What do we have here? This thing is based on the AMG GLE 63S Coupe. And what Brabus has done, I think they have literally done a lot of things. But let me start with the performance. They took the base AMG GLE 63S engine, which is pushing it up to 612 horsepower. We also have the starter generator supporting the engine with another 20 horsepower. But they have pushed it up to 900 horsepower. And how? They extended the engine displacement from a 4.0 to a 4.5, giving it 900 horsepower. All in all, guys, as Brabus did the GT 900 Rocket, the G900 Rocket Edition, it was time for a new one, and here we have it. Guys, let's get right into it. If you want to see a full walk around, full details about this car, just click the video here in the info box above. It will be a quick one, as I already mentioned. The exterior paint is called Superior Grey. We don't have the Stealth Grey on it, and this is a bit more darker, coming very close to the classic and uni grey which we have with the Mercedes models. But looking at the front, guys, this looks so different to a base GLE 63S. The headlights are exactly the same. This is the only thing that you can clearly see multi-beam LEDs, but looking at the grille, this is based on the so-called Panamericana front grille. But what Brabus has done, they have these nice and cool looking carbon fiber intakes here, and in addition to that, the full black finish plus the red stripes, giving this a very, very cool touch. The front bumper, full intakes finished in carbon fiber. Guys, just look at the entire part. This thing here is full finished in carbon fiber, all done here in Brabus at their factory. All in all, looking at this front, guys, this is scary, I'm telling you. Now, concentrating on the side, there's something very cool on this. We have the Aero disc wheels, which come as standard for every Rocket Edition or Rocket. Here we have the 24-inch wheels. The cool thing about this is that we have two things combined. First of all, we have the Platinum Edition Monoblock Z forged wheels, the 24 inches. In addition to that, we have the Aero disc, giving it the final touch, full finished in black with the red details. Also the brake calipers, you can't really spot them. They also have Brabus on them, and also the surroundings, everything finished in red. Looking at the side, we have no wide body on this as we have with all the other Rocket and Rocket Editions, for example with the GT or with the G. Instead, we have all the side fenders finished in carbon fiber, the side bi-turbo 900 badge, black and red finish, lovely. All in all, again, 24 inches here in the back. Guys, these are humongous. The wheels and the tires itself, they are just so big. And in addition, with the Aero disc wheels, this car looks extremely special. But there's something I love about this thing. I just love, and it's the rear. And here we have it, guys. I just turned the car so you have a better view on the rear. Still couldn't decide. What do you guys think looks better, the front or the rear? In my eyes, the rear just looks absolutely amazing. I mean, the normal GLE 63S rear is already nice, but this one is just perfect. Let's just start talking about the rear. The taillights are exactly the same multi-beam LEDs, but looking at the rear spoiler, this is all made by Brabus in Bottrop. Full carbon fiber finish, and this is just huge. As I mentioned in my first video, you can have dinner with your entire family on this rear table, okay? If you want, you can even have dinner with 3 families on this table. It looks amazing. Even the fitment, just look at this. This gap, it's like perfectly placed. Full finished in carbon fiber, done by Brabus. Have a closer look on the badges here. These are also finished in carbon fiber, guys. They look so cool with the red details. And also on the side we have, this side fender finished in carbon fiber, also made by Brabus. And something I don't like about the base GLE 63S Coupe is that the rear diffuser is finished in plastic. I hate it. But this here is finished in carbon fiber. This is quality, guys. I am telling you. Something that most of you guys didn't like were the exhaust tips, that they were round. I just love one simple fact, and it's that we have the diffuser here finished in carbon fiber, then we have a step here, the black finish, then again the carbon matte finish on the exhaust tips as well, and the additional details on the exhaust tips make me love them so much. Something that I also have to mention is that the carbon fiber part here on the diffuser is huge, guys. It's one single part, and as you look, it starts from over here and it doesn't finish there. It's finishing right down under, as you can see, which is extremely cool. Yeah, all in all, guys, how do you like the exterior of this? As I mentioned, I've already done a full exterior view, but now it's time to focus on something more important, and it's the interior inside. So now it's time to concentrate on the interior, guys, but I will be focusing on all of that when we drive this beast and leave the holy halls of Brabus HQ. But before we leave, I just received some nice things which I'm going to give away to you guys. Here we have the nice Brabus coffee mugs, and if you're interested in winning one of these two, I have two of them, just leave a hashtag with Team Brabus in the comment section below, and I will be giving away some of these to my subscribers. But guys, now it's time to start up this beast and start the drive, okay? Let's go. Start stop buttons over here. Let me just start the ignition first. As soon as we do that, the beast comes alive, but not in total. Switching it up to Sport Plus. The exhaust is automatically on then. Okay guys, are you ready to hear this beast? 3, 2, 1, go. Wow. But more sound when we leave and start with the drive, so let's go. So now guys, it's time to start the drive. We are starting from the headquarters of Brabus, the Holy Halls, and let's just jump inside and start with the drive. Wow, just look at this interior. I just love it. And Sven is already waiting. He's going to open up this gate for us, and we will be starting to roll out with the GLE. This is so beautiful. And as we are at Brabus, you can already see all the cars here. Amazing. So we are starting the drive, and guys, this place is heaven on earth. Okay, let me just give you a quick look. New S-Class, S-Maybach, old S63, E-Class Brabus, UK, Maybach, another Maybach, another Maybach, another Maybach, S-Class, another Maybach finished in Rubberlead red. Ooh, another Maybach, another Maybach. And guys, as if it was nothing, we have a G6x6 here. This is my dream car. There's 6x6. Let me just give you a turn. A lot of smart cars as well. Here you can see the 4x4, the 6x6 G-Wagon, G63. Yeah, not completed Brabus on the left-hand side. G-Class, G-Class, G-Brabus from Morocco, GLS Maybach, G63, G63, a lot. Guys, just look at this. Ooh, the color, military green. I think, yeah, that's a paint. It's not a wrap on the G-Class Brabus. The beautiful classic Uni-Grey, the China blue. I love this, guys. This place is full of surprises. The GT Black Series, just Brabus things. This is so usual, normal. But yeah, we will be concentrating on this car today, and we will be driving it. As you guys can already see, it's raining. Yes, it's raining as always when we take out any crazy car. Classic car section is over here. If you guys want to see a Brabus factory tour, just let me know. So we are leaving Brabus headquarters right now. And we are driving in comfort right now. As you can see and yeah, experience with me, there is no sound at all. It's just an easy sound. As you see, a bit of a rumble. Still sporty, but not that much. But as soon as I switch it to Sport Plus, okay, and we're getting started, I guess. All in all, guys, back in the days when I drove this car, it had a modified silencer, but it also had the OPF filter. I didn't believe it when they told me, because the sound was so crazy. Imagine if this car also didn't have an OPF. We have the stock silencer inside this right now, and we will be now experiencing the sound. It will be not sounding as crazy as the last time, I guess. And also it's raining, we can't really push it. We will be trying to experience the most, having a nice sound drive, maybe also drive on the Autobahn a bit, but not really a full Autobahn run full throttle, as it's very wet, and we have some summer tires on this one. Ooh. Okay, you can already hear the turbo sound. Here you can see the main building of the Brabus headquarters. Guys, it's finally, the road is a bit empty. We give you a nice sound now. Oh. Oh, nice. Guys, honestly, I didn't expect the sound. It sounds good, not as loud as we had with the previous car back in the days. It sounds a bit muffled, to be honest, as we have silencers now inside which aren't modified. This thing right now is street legal for Germany and the European market. Back in the days, yeah, some say it wasn't, maybe not. I guess we'll never know. But this one is 100% street legal. Nice, nice. You have very nice pops and bangs. Great popcorn machine. Let me just lower the window. Wow. I love it. Downshift? Sick. So guys, we are right now at the traffic light. It's red right now as the interior of this beautiful GL E900 Rocket Edition. I will just try to give a bit, not 100% full throttle, just to give you the experience of pushing it up. And the speed limit is 70 here. Let's just see how it will perform. As I mentioned, I will not push it to the max as it's very wet right now and we have summer tires on, okay? Let's go. Oh! Did you hear that? Holy! If you do like the regular sound driving, the sound is good. But if you push and shift up, release your foot off the gas pedal, then you have a nice sound. Listen. Nice. Downshift. Okay, no sound. Great sound, guys. All in all, how did you like the drive with the GLE 900 Rocket Edition? I promise you, we will be doing an Autobahn run with this, but when the weather is better, around spring, March, April, something like this, I will definitely let you know, because I promised you guys we will be doing it, and maybe we will be doing it with Konstantin Buschmann, the CEO of Brabus, or maybe with the Drift King Björn Gander, the CTO of Brabus. Stay tuned for that. How do you like the sound and the entire experience? Just let me know in the comment section below, guys. I will be back.
Send the car to France to get the tires changed at one point?
Yes.
That was expensive.
Early on. But now they have the machine here. There's only one place that has it. I think it's Oxnard. So they ship everything there.
The GLA is the starting point for Mercedes SUV ownership, and in this second generation H247 series form is as classy as you'd expect a premium C-segment family hatchbase crossover ought to be from the Stuttgart brand. Thorough engineering borrowed from the Mercedes A-Class means that there's plenty to like beyond the badge, primary selling points focusing upon quality and efficiency. The wide range includes everything from shopping versions to a plug-in hybrid, an off-road capable diesel derivative and track-tamed Mercedes AMG variants. Something for almost everyone then, from a car that very much suits its fashion-conscious segment.
Time for a different kind of Mercedes GLA. This second generation version has evolved into a proper SUV rather than a high-riding hatchback, and it's become more sophisticated in almost every way. It's the car its predecessor wanted to be. Whether it's now the kind of model its customers want it to be is what we're here to find out. Like the very first GLA launched in 2014, this one is A-Class based, like the other 7 compact models that Mercedes now makes. That first X156 series GLA design tested the appetite of global buyers for a small Mercedes crossover, and it was rewarded with so many sales, over 1 million, that the Stuttgart maker replaced it in 2020 with 3 models: this Mark II H247 series GLA, the slightly larger and boxier GLB, and the all-electric EQA. In theory, every segment requirement is covered. Except perhaps the requirement for affordability. This GLA is pitched firmly at the premium end of the small SUV market. It takes on similar models from BMW, Audi, Volvo, Lexus and Jaguar. Now that's fine, providing the ownership experience here is properly reflective of the marketing promises. And that wasn't always the case with this model's predecessor. There's certainly no shortage of the kind of advanced technology potential that customers will be looking for, including an advanced PHEV plug-in version, and that's what we're testing here. Across the range, there's everything from modest shopping variants to the segment's fastest high-performance small SUV, all from a car that's more spacious, more efficient, and considerably more futuristic than before. Sounds promising. Let's take a look. The first generation GLA could easily be dismissed as an A-Class hatch with lifestyle ideas above its station, but this Mark II model is very different, and you feel that right from the get-go. If you're a graduate from the older design, then you'll immediately note the more commanding driving position, and then as you drive, it'll become obvious that the Mark I model's famously lumpy low-speed ride has at last been properly addressed. Both these things got fixed as part of a fundamental redesign based on the completely new MFA platform, which undergirds all current compact Mercedes models. But this Mark II GLA uses an updated version of it with increased rigidity and stiffness. And in a further difference over the current A-Class, all conventionally engined models get a properly sophisticated multi-link rear suspension setup, hence the better damping. Much else is new too. All the mainstream engines for a start, which include the clever plug-in GLA 250e petrol variant that we're trying here with its class-leading range. And Mercedes obviously still thinks that there's a place for diesel in the modern zeitgeist, because the more efficient 2-litre OM654 unit we've seen for some time in the company's old models at last makes an appearance in this one, mated in its more powerful form to a new and more sophisticated 4MATIC four-wheel drive system. The common theme with all this technology, though, is that you have to pay handsomely for it. The GLA variants that the majority of customers will actually end up driving won't feature gutsy diesels, PHEV powertrains, or all-wheel drive traction, but basically the same humble 1.3-litre front-driven Renault 4-cylinder petrol engine, which is these days used by all the most affordable compact Mercedes models. Almost always, as in this case, non-negotiably mated to a 7-speed 7G DCT dual-clutch automatic gearbox that's supplied by Getrag. That base petrol unit appears in 2 basic forms here, with 136 horsepower in the base GLA 180, or with 163 horsepower in the GLA 200 model that most customers prefer. The GLA 200 makes 62 from rest in 8.7 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour. That's 0.9 seconds and 6 miles an hour faster than the feeblest variant. That's provided you select the most focused sport setting from the options provided by the usual Mercedes Dynamic Select driving mode system, the others being Comfort, Eco and Individual. All those alter not only drive throttle response, but also steering feel and ESP stability settings. In practice, these entry-level GLAs feel significantly slower than those stats suggest, though. The lesser unit in particular, with just 200 newton meters of torque, sometimes struggles a bit with the task of propelling 1.5 tons of stylized SUV along with any kind of urgency. Having considered that, and perhaps the perspective that a car of this price has no business sharing an engine with a Renault Clio, then you might well want to limit your perusals to a GLA fitted with a 2-litre engine, in which case it'll be paired with an automatic gearbox of Mercedes origin, the 8-speed 8G DCT unit that every other GLA model in the range uses. There's a 224 horsepower petrol power plant fitted to the GLA 250, which has a nice turn of speed. It makes 62 in 6.9 seconds on the way to 149 miles an hour. There's probably more of a market, though, for the base diesel, the GLA 200D, which offers 150 horsepower and 320 newton meters of torque for decent real-world performance, which sees 62 click by in 8.6 seconds en route to 129 miles an hour. The faster version of that 2-litre diesel, the 190 horsepower unit fitted to the GLA 220D, is favoured with the much improved 4MATIC four-wheel drive system we mentioned earlier. The multi-plate clutch setup now of the electromechanical rather than the hydraulic sort. That's important because it facilitates variable levels of torque split depending on the drive mode that you select. So the car is front biased in the usual Comfort and Eco modes, with 80% of drive being pushed to the front, and rear biased in Sport, with 70% being pushed to the rear. Drive technology of a quite different sort features on the GLA variant that we've chosen here, the 250E. This plug-in petrol hybrid model uses the PHEV powertrain, which is also fitted in Mercedes A, B and CLA ranges. With this, the 163 horsepower version of the volume 1.3 litre petrol unit is here paired with the 8-speed Mercedes auto transmission, and it's mated to a 75 kilowatt electric motor powered by a 15.6 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery. That's enough to produce a very healthy 218 horsepower system output with a gutsy 450 newton meters of torque, and that's enough to dispatch 62 in 7.1 seconds on the way to 136 miles an hour if you don't care about prolonging your potential driving range, and that's WLTP rated at a very class competitive 37 miles. This is progress that you can monitor via a neat selectable energy flow screen that's available from the Center Dash Monitor's EQ menu, which shows you in real time what's being driven by what. This car has a pleasing preference for battery-powered motoring, and there's an extra electric Dynamic Select drive mode for use if, once you get going, you want to prevent the combustion engine cutting in. In theory, you can stay in battery drive all the way up to 87 miles an hour. Alternatively, an electric in city option allows you to save battery charge for urban driving that you might want to do later on in your trip. Either way, you can maximize battery range with careful use of the steering wheel paddle shifters there when you're in electric mode, not to switch ratios, but to vary levels of brake energy recuperation. Although it's easier just to pull hard on either one, this then selects a radar-based D-Auto recuperation program, and that basically does it all for you. A couple of minor dynamic differences separate the 250E model's drive experience from the more conventional GLAs. One isn't much of an issue: the 8G DCT auto gearbox's greater preference to continually shift up to longer ratios in pursuit of better economy. The other might be, though, a noticeable degeneration in ride quality, which you feel over really poor surfaces and speed humps. That's brought on by an extra 150 kilos of battery weight and by the engineering necessity of switching this plug-in model to a less sophisticated torsion beam rear suspension setup. Otherwise, the driving experience here isn't very much different to that of any other mainstream GLA, which means that, as we said at the beginning, on mainstream versions of this car, ride quality is vastly better than was served up by the first generation model. Just as well as for our market, Mercedes continues to refuse to offer adaptive damping as an option. Yes, the car can still struggle over particularly bad surfaces, but once you speed up, you'll find it deals with camber changes and undulations with the surety of a far more expensive SUV. As with any small crossover of this kind, there's no particular sense of engagement to be had in pushing on through the turns, but if you do, you'll note the first-rate body control, and that's aided by the stiffer platform and the wider tracks, and the light but pleasingly accurate steering. BMW X1 is probably a bit more dynamic, and an Audi Q3 is probably a bit more comfort-orientated, but in neither case would the difference be likely to sway you against GLA ownership if you found yourself attracted by the frisson of quality here and by the lure of the three-pointed star, of course. Now, we normally finish driving reviews of small SUVs with a brief reference to the fact that typical entrants in this class aren't really engineered for any sort of life beyond a paved surface. This model's predecessor certainly wasn't. This, though, is supposed to be the entry rung on a ladder of reasonably capable Mercedes SUVs. The G in the GLA name stands for the German Gelände, which means terrain. So, emboldened by the opportunity to develop that new 4MATIC system, the development team decided to give the single mainstream diesel variant equipped with that four-wheel drive setup a bit of extra soft roading capability, and that's courtesy of the inclusion of a standard off-road engineering package. In the extremely unlikely event that you're the kind of GLA customer who likes the idea of taking on gnarly tracks and ploughed fields in this car, it'd be wise not to get your hopes up too far here. This package does little to improve this car's restricted wheel articulation and very limited ground clearance. The latter's raised by just 9mm with the 4MATIC system, but you do get an additional off-road dynamic select driving mode, which adjusts the power delivery and the ABS control in a way which will help in light forest tracks. Plus, in the off-road setting, the all-wheel drive clutch acts as an interaxle differential lock with the basic torque distribution front to rear balanced at 50-50. There's also a downhill speed regulation feature, basically hill descent control to ease you down slippery slopes. Plus there's some extra all-wheel drive screen graphics, and you get a clever off-road light built into the multi-beam LED headlamps, which in off-road mode remains permanently switched on at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. It offers a wider, brighter light distribution in front of the vehicle and allows you to more easily see obstacles in rough terrain in the dark. You would still be unwise to venture anywhere that might put those figures severely to the test, but this package might just enable a GLA to clamber up a slippery track to, say, a weekend Lake District holiday home, the sort of thing that might represent the summit of a typical owner's off-road ambitions. We'll finish by briefly covering a couple of 4MATIC GLA models aimed at Silverstone rather than Snowdon, the two Mercedes-AMG high-performance variants. The most accessible of the pair is a GLA 35 4MATIC, which, as you'd expect, uses the brand's A35 hot hatch model's potent drivetrain, a 2-litre petrol turbo, 306 horsepower power plant, mated to a specific AMG Performance 4MATIC drive setup, and a rifle crack 8-speed AMG Speed Shift DCT paddle shift auto gearbox. If you're quick with those shifters, 62 can be crested in just 5.2 seconds from rest, and top speed has to be restrained at 155 miles an hour, all to the accompaniment of an artificially induced but rather animated crackling engine soundtrack. There are extra slippery and Sport Plus dynamic select drive mode settings, and the system's different modes are linked to the AMG Dynamics Agility Control, which adds a further layer of drive adaptability, altering torque distribution, steering characteristics, and stability system intervention to suit different conditions. If you prefer your hot GLA's drive experience to be of the Vindaloo rather than the Madras variety, then you'll be directed instead to the segment's very fastest small SUV, the GLA 45S 4MATIC Plus. Here, the Stuttgart brand's Falterbach tuning division has massaged that 2-litre power plant out to a hefty 421 horsepower, which is 40 HP more than the equivalent version of the previous generation model. And that makes this the most powerful series production 4-cylinder turbo engine in the world. This unit develops 500 Newton meters of torque from just 2,250 RPM, up from 475 Newton meters before, and that's significantly better than can be managed by this variant's closest rival, the Audi RS Q3. Use the incorporated race start function, and 62 from rest takes just 4.3 seconds. That's en route to 168 miles an hour. Traction through the bends is enhanced by AMG Performance 4MATIC Plus all-wheel drive and AMG torque control. Plus, there's bespoke AMG suspension with adaptive damping based around the 3 modes of AMG ride control. There's also a high-performance braking system, and track fiends can play with the AMG Track Pace app. Those two Mercedes-AMG models offer an interesting confection, but we can't help feeling that it's a bit at odds with the essential character of this car, just as the off-road engineering package is. This car's about suburbia and the school run, and that's territory it now addresses with a level of sophistication that you might almost feel makes the premium asking price justifiable. Every third Mercedes sold these days is now an SUV, every fourth a compact car, and at last, in driving the GLA in this second generation form, you can see why. If you want to know the difference between a crossover, basically a
Land Rover's 5th generation Discovery continues to offer the toughest, the most practical and the most capable choice in the large SUV sector, especially in this much improved form. It's now more sophisticated both in the cabin and under the bonnet, yet it continues to have its own authentic appeal. In many ways, it's the most complete expression of the Land Rover brand.
In over 3 decades on sale, nothing else has quite replicated the Land Rover Discovery's blend of off-road capability, luxury and family practicality. Virtues emphasised by this 5th generation model, originally launched in 2017. The new era Land Rover Defender, though, offers much of this as well at a similar price point. Rivals have upped their game, which is why in late 2020 the Solihull maker brought us a substantially revised version of the Discovery 5, the car that we're going to look at here. Without the Discovery model line, it's doubtful whether the Land Rover brand would even exist today. Launched back in 1989, the original version merely bolted more spacious bodywork onto an ageing Range Rover chassis. But the sales that this and the subsequent updated Discovery 2 design managed to generate were considerable, enough to save the company and finance development of a properly sophisticated Discovery model, the 3rd generation car launched back in 2004. Thanks to its double chassis and air-suspended integrated body frame technology, this contender was able to match decent tarmac driving dynamics to Land Rover's legendary off-road prowess, and customers loved it. So much so that the brand kept the same basic design for the Discovery 4 model of 2009, which added in a smarter cabin and more effective engine wear. When the time came to create the 5th generation version of this SUV, though, this car, it was clear that a fresh direction would be needed. And that's what we got, the familiar body shape giving way to this sleeker silhouette that borrowed much from the smaller Discovery Sport model. What lay beneath the curvier panel work was even more significant. The old, heavy-duty body-on-frame architecture of the previous designs replaced by the more car-like aluminium monocoque used by modern-era large Range Rovers. All of this represented welcome evolution, but rivals still felt more sophisticated in terms of media connectivity and what lay beneath the bonnet. If you'd previously dismissed the Discovery for either of those reasons, you need to look again now, because with this facelifted model, things are very different.
A range of new straight-six mild hybrid petrol and diesel engines headline the changes, while inside the cabin gains the brand's latest Pivi Pro infotainment technology with its 11.4-inch screen. Suspensional and handling updates better prepare this car for the tarmac territory it'll be spending most of its time in. And of course, this smarter, safer model is still king of the hill when it comes to off-road prowess and towing ability. In short, if this car can deliver on its promises, it'll achieve its maker's stated objective, to produce nothing less than the ultimate family SUV, which all sounds quite promising. Time to put this car to the industry's most comprehensive test, the Car and Driving Review. There's something rather grand about driving a Discovery. If you can't afford a fully fledged Range Rover, it's this car, not the Range Rover Sport, that gets closest to emulating that plutocratic model's imperious gait, high seating position and easy ride comfort. Equip a Discovery to a higher level than we have here and you'll get something of a Range Rover feeling of luxury too. Like the Range Rover, Discovery doesn't attempt to deliver the kind of cockpit-like design you'd get in a more car-like SUV with all the controls angled towards you. Here instead, the positioning is more about creating a place of command, a place to do business with the elements, be they the snake-infested swamps of the rainy season in the Serengeti or the snarled-up traffic of a wet, windy morning on the school run. You'll want to know about the changes made to this improved version of the Series 5 design, and they really are quite fundamental thanks to the adoption of Land Rover's EVA 2.0 electrical vehicle architecture. This is an embellished version of the aluminium monocoque chassis that the Discovery 5 borrowed from the brand's two largest Range Rover models at its original launch back in 2017. Embellished because a more sophisticated platform was needed to accommodate the new generation of mild hybrid straight-six petrol and diesel engines that this improved Discovery can now offer. This electrified change, Land Rover hopes, will leave Discovery customers continuing to feel that diesel is a viable option, despite the Green Lobby's disapproval of black pump fuel. Not that a follower of Al Gore would be particularly impressed by the economy and emissions improvements this car's mild hybrid tech has brought about, but choosing a diesel power plant does at least leave the running costs of this car on the right side of realistic. There are two to choose from, the D250 and the D300 variant that we're trying here, these figures designating the braked horsepower outputs. The D250 makes 62 miles an hour in 7.6 seconds on the way to 120 miles an hour. The D300 improves those figures to 6.5 seconds and 130 miles an hour. Torque and pulling power, though, not total output or ready acceleration, is the keynote here to facilitate the Discovery's easy gait, off-road prowess and prodigious towing capacity. And of course, as you'd expect, this car has all the grunt you'd ever want through the gears of its smooth, shifting 8-speed ZF auto transmission. 570 Newton meters of it in the case of the D250 and 650 Newton meters in this D300. All of which is just as well given this SUV's near 2.5-ton curb weight. As mentioned, there are petrol engines available too, though unlike a Defender or a Range Rover Sport, you can't have one mated to PHEV plug-in hybrid tech. You'll be offered two conventional green pump choices, but to be frank, we wouldn't really recommend either. The base P300 variant is the only model in the range to lack the mild hybrid tech and use only 4 cylinders, with a 2-litre powertrain that struggles a little with the task of propelling a vehicle this heavy when the car's fully laden or on uphill gradients. Certainly more than you'd think after checking out the stated performance figures of the base variant, which sees 62 miles an hour dispatched in 6.9 seconds on the way to 125 miles an hour. The 400 Newton meter torque figure is the key stat, quite enough for most cars, but not for one weighing nearly 2.5 tons. Plus, a P300 4-cylinder Discovery isn't anything like as good as the other 6-cylinder variants off-road. We'll tell you why in a moment. All of which means that those in search of a version of this car with petrol power would be better off going for the straight 6-engined mild hybrid P360, which ups that torque figure to 500 Newton meters and improves the performance readings to 6.5 seconds and 130 miles an hour. The only issue is fuel economy that'll see you struggling to reach 20 miles to the gallon around town, which is the kind of return you'd need deep pockets to justify. So that's covered the engines, which most of the time you'll be using in the two tarmac drive modes, Eco and Comfort, provided by the terrain response system you activate using this dial between the seats. If it's been upgraded to the terrain response 2 status we have here, then a press of the dial activates an auto setting that makes all the setting decisions for you. All of this tech is much the same as what you get in a Defender, a model which could also give you 7 seats and even tougher capability. All of which meant the need to differentiate the Discovery tarmac drive experience as part of this Series 5 design's midterm update. The main changes are suspension orientated, new air springs and recalibrated dampers. But handling issues were also addressed, and as a result the steering is now a little more precise, and redesigned anti-roll bars quell this Discovery's propensity to roll at speed through tight bends. An improved so-called intelligent all-wheel drive version of the four-wheel drive system also helps here, maximising traction, on-road dynamics and driveline efficiency. Overall, we're quite impressed with the differences that all these suspensional and handling changes have made. The standard air suspension now seems properly engaged with the business of directing your Discovery where you point it, working with those upgraded anti-roll bars to allow corners to be taken more quickly than they could be before. A lighter rival Audi Q7 or Volvo XC90 SUV would still perhaps be a little faster through any given set of turns, but wouldn't be any more stable or really any more enjoyable either. The vastly improved steering rack, another thing borrowed from the Range Rover Sport, also helps immeasurably here, transforming the response that you get at the helm from being slow, heavy and spongy, as it was previously, to the light, direct and responsive demeanour now in evidence. But none of this was intended, or is, enough to make this into any kind of sporting SUV. As before, with the Discovery, driving enjoyment here is delivered through lowering the heartbeat rather than raising it. All manner of asphalt dispatched with a sense of imperious superiority that you might previously have thought only a fully fledged Range Rover could deliver. Once you got used to substantial dimensions that initially make this Land Rover feel a little bulky on tighter country roads, you'll start to feel really confident in it, helped by that commanding driving position. There's a heft and a substance to everything a Discovery does that imbues real confidence, especially when you're towing, something you may well have chosen this car to do because it offers a class-leading 3.5-ton brake towing weight capability. A rival Audi Q750 TDI can only tow 2.8 tons, and a Volvo XC90 B5 diesel just 2.4 tons. That gives you some perspective on the enormous difference in ultimate capability that a Discovery owner would enjoy. If you want to further embellish that, an optional advanced tow assist system is designed to autonomously steer a hitched-up trailer into place. All the driver has to do is to operate the accelerator and brake pedals. The capability that makes this such a great tow car is, as expected, even more in evidence when the time comes to leave the tarmac, which has a great deal to do with the fact that most versions of this Discovery can be fitted with a feature missing from nearly all this model's premium competitors, a twin-speed, low-range gearbox that'll give you a whole extra set of low-range ratios that you'll need if the going gets really sticky. It's worth mentioning, though, that you can't have this feature on the base 4-cylinder P300 petrol variant. It's only actually standard on the P360 and is optional with the two diesel variants. The base 2-litre P300 petrol model also does without the advanced driveline fitted on the bigger engines, which optimises the torque split between front and rear axles using a range of sensors to distribute torque to suit the conditions. Another reason not to choose that smaller engine. As before, a key part of this Land Rover's mud-plugging prowess is the acclaimed terrain response system we mentioned earlier, which in its most basic form offers a choice of 3 selectable off-road settings to suit the ground that you're covering. Grass, gravel, snow, sand or mud ruts. The Solihull engineers have built on this by giving the Smart 5 Discovery a superb 500mm of wheel articulation and a massive 900mm of wading depth. If you're fording a river and wanting to test that second stat, you'll be able to use the clever wade sensing feature there to show you the depth of the water that you're driving through. A visual display and warning chimes will alert you as the water level rises around the vehicle. If you're a serious off-roader, you might want to go further. Indeed, you might feel the need to, given that this Discovery 5 still doesn't offer as much ground clearance as perhaps a committed off-piste driver might like. Thanks to its rough integrated body frame double chassis underpinnings, a pre-2017 era Discovery 4 could sit as much as 310mm from the ground. This car, in contrast, will ground out if obstacles beneath it are higher than 283mm. To give you some class perspective, a Savile-suited Mercedes GLS can manage up to 306mm. But don't be put off, because even so, this 5th generation Discovery really can do almost everything off-road that you could manage in a comparable Defender, particularly if you specify the optional advanced off-road capability pack that we've been trying here, which adds a package of further key items. Our favourite element is the Terrain Response 2 system, which, as its name suggests, is an upgraded version of the Terrain Response setup mentioned earlier. It works in the same way, but adds an extra rock crawl setting and, more importantly, a really useful auto mode. That's the one we mentioned earlier, analysing the conditions that you're driving in, then automatically selecting the most suitable terrain program to cope. Plus, the pack also includes an all-terrain progress control system, essentially a kind of low-speed cruise control that helps you maintain steady progress on really challenging trails. And the Advanced Off-Road Capability Pack gives you a fresh feature developed for this updated version of the Discovery 5, configurable terrain response, which allows you to alter the settings of the differentials, the powertrain, steering and the traction control for easier off-road prowess. If you can spend even more, we'd also consider adding the optional active rear locking differential, which will help extricate the car on really sticky surfaces. Even in its standard form though, this car should seriously impress you with what it can tackle off-road. With the air suspension raised to its highest point, there's an approach angle of 34 degrees that'll get you up steep slopes, and once you've used the hill descent control to ease you down them again, you'll be glad of a useful departure angle of 30 degrees. The ramp angle is equally impressive, giving you up to 27.5 degrees. In short, be assured, this Discovery is almost certainly more talented off-road than you are. All that's necessary is that you'll acclimatise to its capabilities and press the right buttons. Then tune in to Radio 4 and watch the worst the elements can throw at you glide past the window. Of course, the greatest challenge this car will face in the hands of most likely owners will be that of the urban jungle. The styling of this 5th generation model helps to hide some of its bulk, but as we've already suggested, it's still an enormous thing, nearly 5 metres long and over 2 metres wide, so you'll have to pay close attention when heading up multi-storey ramps or driving through barriers. Mind you, a turning circle of 12.3 metres is pretty good for a car of this stature, and we found reversing into bays to be simpler than in, say, an Audi Q7 or a Volvo XC90. Head out on the highway and you'll find this Discovery can turn in a far more convincing performance as a luxury saloon than its predecessors. Even with its tall sides, there's no hint of it being swayed offline by crosswinds. Instead, it feels planted and solid, so you can sit back and relax as the suspension soaks away undulations and the engine purrs away in the background with a muted rumble. In summary then, despite all the fanfare surrounding the new era Defender, there's still very much a place for this car in the Land Rover lineup. A Defender makes a style and capability statement. A big Range Rover offers a fashion statement. With a Discovery, though, you're making a practicality statement. Families will continue to like it for that. We do too. You might not necessarily immediately appreciate that this was an evolved version of the 5th generation Discovery, but if you knew anything at all about this Land Rover model line, you'd certainly recognise it as a Discovery. Key design cues familiar from previous generation designs, the clamshell bonnet, the stepped roof and the distinctive C-pillars see to that. This Mark V car, though, pushed its look a bit more upmarket and does so a little further with this midterm update, thanks to redesigned LED headlights with animated indicators and a more distinctive daytime running light signature. Otherwise, things are much as they were before. So the windscreen is quite angled, unlike the boxy Discoveries of old. There's a twin contoured bonnet, and these vertical corner bumper outlets give the shape some overtaking presence, while a prominent silvered skid plate lower down reminds the world at large of this Land Rover's SUV ancestry. Opt for an R-Design model and you get front fog lights plus a revised bumper with a wider body colour graphic. From the side, you get a proper perspective for the sheer size of this car. It's nearly 5 metres long and more than 2 metres wide, though that's not really any larger than a rival Volvo XC90, and the length is actually a touch shorter than a rival Audi Q7. As usual with the Discovery, this rear C-pillar certainly does stand out, though in our view it also delivers a hint of SsangYong that the profile would have been better off without. Nicer is this side fender vent in the front wing, embellished with our design trim, which blends into a rising crease that runs the length of the car. This swage line lower down gives the flanks some much needed shape and separates black plastic-clad wheel arches housing rims between 20 and 22 inches in size. We've got 21-inch style spec 5 split spoke gloss silver rims here. Now, we mentioned the signature stepped roofline earlier, which is great for third row seating, but means the need for a more bespoke set of roof rails, which is probably why they cost extra and we don't have them here. This little black sliver at the top here at the rear is intended to reference the tiny narrow roof light windows of a Defender. Time to move to the rear, which was the most controversial part of this 5th generation model at launch, and still is, thanks to the curious offset placing of this number plate recess, supposedly a nod to Discoveries of the past. Changes back here include these redesigned signature LED lights and this gloss black panel, which includes the trademark Discovery script. More significant, though, as usual, are the things you can't see. At its original launch back in 2017, this Discovery 5 switched to the Range Rover Sport's lighter aluminium monocoque, a chassis here updated to suit this improved model's latest mild hybrid engines. Land Rover refers to this enhanced platform as EVA 2.0, the letters standing for Electrical Vehicle Architecture. It's all very sophisticated, but unfortunately it's also heavy, despite all that aluminium. Further weighed down by all its four-wheel drive hardware, this car typically tips the scales at close to 2.5 tons. Time to take a seat inside. You'd be disappointed if you didn't have to climb up into a Discovery. That's part of its appeal, though older folk can ease the process by selecting the low-set access mode provided as part of the air suspension settings. Once installed in the driver's chair, you get a commanding view of the road ahead that locates your eyeline several inches above where it would be in a German rival. In that respect, this car's similar to its Range Rover Sport showroom stablemate, but this cabin, quite intentionally, lacks the purposeful driver positioning of that car and some of the sheer indulgence of its fixtures and fittings. It does, however, in this improved form gain more Range Rover Sport-like controls, this Sport Select gear lever replacing the old rising gear shift dial, and this 4-spoke wheel instead of the more old-fashioned Range Rover style item. This cabin's also significantly more sophisticated than it used to be, primarily because of its adopted screen tech. This much bigger 11.4-inch Pivi Pro central infotainment monitor and an even larger 12.3-inch interactive driver display, which replaces conventional dials in the instrument binnacle. As before, there's a clean, fresh, almost Scandinavian quality to the design, delivering a premium feeling very much able to equal what you get in obvious rivals. Previous Discovery models had rather too many white, clean, rubberized surfaces to feel really upmarket, but this one is much better. There's stitching across the dashboard, silver trim around the center stack and the steering wheel, piano black surfacing on the center stack, and even on this base S-Spec model you get these attractive driftwood style inlays. Finding a comfortable driving position could hardly be easier. These heated, electrically operated front seats featuring either 14, 18 or 20-way power adjustment depending on trim. You get a captain-style armrest and standard upholstery either in grained leather or in this softer, more eco-based Lux Tech material. Pay extra and you can add richer Windsor leather and cooling if you wish. But what about all this new media evolution? This more sophisticated central Pivi Pro screen has certainly brought the cabin bang up to date, a vast improvement over the previous in-control setup, and not only because this screen's 48% larger. Basically what's on offer here is a whole fresh generation of infotainment, powered by dual SIM technology with 2 LTE modems, enabling the software to carry out multiple functions at the same time, such as streaming media or downloading software over-the-air updates that will enable the system to continually update itself. Apparently 50% fewer inputs are required to operate this setup, and previous owners will immediately notice how much quicker everything is. Thanks to a built-in backup battery, initialization for the 3D navigation system takes just seconds. 4G Wi-Fi connectivity is optional, but if you have it, up to 8 devices around the car can be connected, so your rear passengers will be grateful. Drivers will also appreciate the smarter, simpler menu structure. This right-hand menu gives you the screen's major sections: nav, phone, audio and car. And as usual with these kinds of systems, there's a split main display that prioritizes the things that you'll need most frequently, probably nav, phone and audio, as here. Unlike the old in-control setup, you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring on this monitor with the option of wireless connectivity. But the voice control functionality here is nothing like as intuitive as that you'll find on German rivals. Still, there's a lot of detail buried in the car section, particularly in the ride height, 4x4i and eco data sections. Plus a very good standard 360-degree surround view camera system that gives you on-road, off-road and towing camera viewpoints. Just about anything else you might need to know can be found on this interactive driver display instrument binnacle screen, controlled by this new steering wheel's rather cheap feeling hidden until lit switches. The left one, your access point to scroll through vehicle, media, trip and display menus. This binnacle's TFT monitor isn't quite as customizable as the virtual cockpit display in a rival Audi Q7, but it does offer a choice of single or twin dial formats, or you can choose one with almost full screen mapping, or go for a layout prioritizing either media or driver assistance functions. And you can configure the info panel in the center of the screen with either a map, a trip summary, a media readout or 4x4i info. Enough on media, now let's get practical. Cabin storage provision was an area in which the 5th generation Discovery took a big step forward at its original launch, and it's still impressive. The cleverest touch is this one, a little piano black trimmed compartment hidden behind the ventilation controls, ideal for stashing valuables out of sight. You might also be impressed by the fact that there are separate upper and lower glove boxes. The upper one has a 12-volt socket, though unfortunately its lid won't stay open. An overhead sunglasses compartment has been forgotten, and this small open cubby by the driver's right knee isn't good for much. but you get this decently sized storage area at the bottom of the center stack, incorporating a cubby, a USB-C port, and an optional wireless charging mat. And there's plenty on the lower center console between the seats. Sliding back this cover next to the redesigned gear stick reveals a couple of cup holders, which in turn slide back to reveal a deep compartment beneath. For the back is this deep lidded box. When you lift its lid, you'll find USB A and C ports, plus a useful lift-out tray, beneath which is a deep compartment capable of holding up to 4 iPads. Or if you want to put drinks or snacks down here, you can specify this area to be refrigerated. You also get a curry hook in the passenger footwell for your Friday night takeaway. There are also decently sized door bins, each capable of holding a 1-litre bottle. And you'll find ticket clips in the sun visors. What else? These chunky ventilation controls are designed so that they can be easily used when wearing gloves, and you push each one for fan speed. Forward visibility is excellent, thanks not only to the commanding driving position, but also to the large windows. Your rearward view, unfortunately, as usual with 7-seaters, is heavily compromised when all 3 seating rows are in place. So it's disappointing that Land Rover doesn't offer here the little roof camera that in an Evoque projects the image onto the rear view mirror. Still, that 3D surround view camera system helps you out here, plus there are of course parking sensors fitted all around the car as standard. The head-up display is optional, and Land Rover has added the option of a sophisticated cabin air ionization system, which uses advanced filters to reduce the level of allergens, toxins and harmful particulates in the cabin. Right, let's move rearwards. In many ways, the further back you go, the more spacious this Discovery becomes by class standards. Something that's immediately obvious once you pull back this wide opening door and take a seat in the second row. Now, though this middle compartment can't quite match the roomy feel you get in a rival Volvo XC90, there's 960mm of legroom. So, it's significantly more spacious than the longer Audi Q7 can manage to be. This low centre transmission tunnel also makes it more viable for the transport of 3 fully grown adults who get ports for almost every conceivable kind of media connectivity. There's both USB-A and USB-C ports, plus a 12-volt socket, and click-and-go 5-volt attachment points on the front seat backs, so that you can attach tablets and the like. Each seat can manually slide back and forth, and you can electrically recline the backrests too. These second-row seats have been redesigned for this improved version of the Discovery 5, now featuring improved lateral support, longer, thicker cushions and better profiling. All of it intended to enhance under-thigh support and improve occupant posture. In another change, the vents for second-row passengers have now been more conventionally positioned in the centre, having been moved from the B-pillars, which now, as a result, have been left with these curious open cubbies that aren't much good for anything. Another fairly useless cubby features by the centre vents, a space that would be used for the 3 or 4 zone climate control panel if this particular car had that feature. There are also seat back pockets, overhead reading lights and stout handles on the B-pillars so that you can hold on if the driver gets a bit too enthusiastic off-road. You also get coat hooks in the overhead grab handles, Isofix child seat fastenings on the outer seats, and the doors with their neat little round speakers feature decently sized bins. Time to take a seat in the third row. Now, it's impossible to imagine a Discovery without a third seating row, but that's what we would have had if the design team had incorporated the plug-in hybrid powertrain that Land Rover offers as an option on its other models, which is why PHEV tech is lacking as an option for Discovery folk. Thanks to the fact that the previously optional powered rear seat package for the middle row is now standard across the range, you might reasonably expect this outer second row chair to glide out of the way without any sort of huffing and puffing on your part. In actual fact, though, the electric assistance only applies to this seat backrest. You actually have to push the seat base forward yourself and back again afterwards. And once you've moved the middle seat out of the way, Well, you'd think that a total body length just a fraction under 5 meters would make access to the very rear relatively straightforward, but as you can see, it's certainly not that easy to get to the third row chairs. Dropping the air suspension down to that lower access mode that we mentioned earlier will certainly help with the step up, but the wriggle required through this restricted gap may still be beyond grandma if you're thinking of confining her to the very back of the car on your next Sunday afternoon trip out to the garden centre. Once you are inside, it's clear that this is that rarest of things, a 7-seat car that isn't a 5-seater with a couple of extra boot-mounted child seats, which is all that nearly every opposition model leaves you with. We're thinking here of the rival XC90 and Q7 SUVs we mentioned earlier. And when they created this car, Land Rover's development department were too. A member of the team is 6 foot 4 inches tall, and apparently he's quite comfortable in these seats. He was squashed and had his head shoved into the roof when the brand tested those rival Volvo and Audi models. Legroom is very reasonable by the mean standards of the class, as I've suggested, but you might need middle-row folk to push their sliding seats forward a little to help out. The 38mm increase in wheelbase length incorporated into this 5th generation model certainly helps here. Each of these chairs have ISOFIX child seat fastenings. Why do so many car makers forget that when it comes to third-row seating? Plus, seat heating is optional. In addition, both occupants are provided with their own vents, cup holders, LED lights, and individual lidded storage areas fitted with USB ports. And it helps that these rear side windows, fitted out with heating elements, are of a reasonable size. Let's finish by taking a look at the boot. At the time of the original launch of this 5th generation Discovery model, back in 2017, there was a lot of fuss made about Land Rover having dispensed with this model line's trademark split-opening rear tailgate, mainly voiced by people who'd forgotten that the original 1st generation Discovery didn't feature one of those either. Fortunately, buyers of this latest version aren't offered the awful heavy side hinge door that owners of that old...
Wrap it up, boys and girls. Here's a little bit of a car test show.